under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember Davis. At this time, I'd like to recognize Mr. Glenn Outlaw, the chair for the Planning and Zoning. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, as soon as I get organized here, I believe we're ready for hearing of residents, and we have 3 people on the list. First is Zach White, and if you step up to the podium and please give your name and address for the record.
Zach White was unable to be here. He asked that I would present the video. My name is Maggie Titterington with the Chamber, 1730 Schertz Parkway, and I'm going to kind of run it over into my time because I think I'm the next one in there. Good evening, P&Z gentlemen and council. What I'd like to do is just preface this. I know that the council was sent. Can you make the desktop come back on?
Hit laptop.
Hit what? Laptop? Minimize. Okay, what am I doing? Okay, it's not touch.
There you go. Yep.
All right. I know a lot of the city council has already received this. On behalf of Zach White with Revolution Church, he is about to start developing his church property in Schertz, and I know that among the issues that are going to be lightly discussed tonight with the ordinances and the codes is going to be tree mitigation, and so I'd like to show this video on his behalf.
Hey, my name is Zach White, and I pastor Revolution Church. I moved my family to Schertz to start this new church in June of 2009. In the 10-plus years that we've been here, our church family has grown and thrived and made a positive impact in the community. Today, we average 1,300 people in attendance per weekend, and we reach people from all over the San Antonio metro area, but over 70% of our families live in this immediate area. We currently lease a facility in Selma, but we've outgrown it. And so today I'm out here on our beautiful church property that we purchased in Schertz on 3009 and Wiederstein, just south of HEB. We chose this property because of its high visibility and its beauty. We've been working to develop plans for our campus and have been informed that the city is working to update the tree mitigation code and is seeking some input. After reworking our site plan multiple times to preserve trees, we've learned some things that might be helpful to our community as a whole. Let me start by just saying we fully agree that trees do contribute to the overall quality of our community. Citizens and businesses should be encouraged to both reasonably preserve existing trees as well as plant new ones when possible. As we develop our campus plans, we're looking for ways to accomplish those goals in a way that fairly distributes the requirements and expenses across our community. We are grateful for the opportunity to speak into this process and suggest options for your consideration and your action. The current tree regulation seems to place almost all of the burden on enhancing our community's tree inventory upon the shoulders of those property owners whose land already has existing trees. Let me give you 2 example scenarios. In scenario 1, I own 10 acres of land that's not populated with trees. The city requires me to generally provide the following. We've got to plant 90 trees that are 2.5 inches in diameter minimum, ensure that 20% of my land area is in the form of landscape. I'm allowed flexibility to generally develop the balance of my property to maximize functionality and economic benefit. Now, scenario 2. Imagine with me for a moment that you own a different 10-acre property. It's zoned the same, but your property is heavily wooded. Let's say the property has 700 existing protected trees. The city currently places a much heavier burden on your landscape requirements. First, you must leave a minimum of 25% of the existing trees without limit. If you take 700 trees, that means 175 trees. If you allow an average drip area of 350 square feet, that's 61,250 square feet, or 1.4 acres of your property. That comes out to 14% of your property, and that only works if the trees happen to be perfectly spaced. Second, you're also subject to the same landscape buffers and areas required on all properties. And third, if you remove any of the remaining 525 trees, you must either replace them elsewhere on the property or pay a fee to remove them. If you only remove half of the remaining trees for your needed development and presume an average tree diameter of 12 inches, that fee exceeds $350,000. If you must remove a larger tree, heritage or protected, you are further penalized with a diameter multiplier factor of as much as 3 to 1. That's a lot of tree information. Let's compare the two example scenarios. The first owner is allowed to develop as much as 80% of their property and is required to install 90 trees at 2.5 inches diameter. This would be an estimated cost of $100 per inch, which equals about $22,500. The second owner is allowed to develop a much lower percentage of their property. This seems to equate to a taking without compensation or fairness. And much worse, the second owner is penalized with $350,000 in fees even after he leaves 175 of the big, beautiful existing trees in place. Our church family finds itself in the shoes of the second owner as we proceed with our desire to build a church on our property for our community. We want to build a beautiful campus that the community can be proud of, a place from which we can continue to make our community better and love people. We join you in your love for trees, and we want to save as many trees as we can, as our plans show. We've worked hard to do just that, reworking our plans, moving parking spaces, and building footprints multiple times to preserve as many trees as possible. But after we do more than most are required, we believe that it's unfair to ask us to pay these huge fees on top of the extras we have already agreed to. We do not ask for special privileges, we just ask to adjust the rules fairly so that everyone contributes their share.
And I'm going to go ahead and stop that there because I don't want to overtake my time. I probably only got about 30 seconds left on my time. But Zach just really appreciates you taking into consideration what he has put forth. I know that you all have already discussed possible changes and thoughts behind the tree mitigation, but you can see where he's coming through on the process, and he's not suggesting any solution at this point, but just opening it up for a talking discussion of what it possibly could be. I was thinking, and why not use the same standard that you use for barren land, you know, and then have a penalty for removing heritage trees or specific protected trees, but something where the equation is not quite so penalizing not only just the property use, but also the monies that they have to pay to develop that property. And I'm going to go ahead and stop there because I don't want to overstep my time, but thank you very much. Thank you.
So Maggie, you were number 2 on the list. I say you're number 2 on the list was. Mr. Mayor, are you okay with giving her a few more minutes?
Sure, it's your call. It's your hearing the residents.
If you'd like to.
I will take that. Maggie Titterington, 1730 Schertz Parkway. No, basically, I'm just very excited, and I at least wanted to extend major kudos to several of the city council persons who have approached me about this subject because they've been approached, and also Brian James has been very instrumental in going through this and walking through the process of the way the ordinances is, but in talking with him in discussions about some possible scenarios of where this could be more equally distributed. I really look forward to seeing what council will come forward with, what P&Z suggests as well. But as you can see, he so plainly laid it out that I had no idea that that's the way that it actually looked in numbers and cents. And like I said, I love trees. I'm a tree hugger. But I think there has to be a balance between the property and the developer and what can be afforded and the feeling of being penalized that your land has too many trees and what they have to work around. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And last on the list is David Gleason.
David Gleason, 7007 Prestonshire Lane in Dallas, Texas. One of my partners and I own 1.7 acres on the west side of FM 3009 in the southwest quadrant of 3009 and Wiederstein.
Excuse me, Mr. Gleason, could you maybe talk a little more into the microphone? We're having a hard time hearing you over here.
Talk more into the microphone?
Yes, sir, if you would, please.
Okay, sure. Is this okay? Is this better?
No, I think you really need to get closer to it, I'm afraid.
Okay. We have been working with the city through our engineer and architect we bought the site 2 years ago and spent so much time and so much money already just in the engineering and architectural fees trying to work around the tree mitigation, plus the site has some challenging topo. The 1.7 acres has 350 trees on it that we've surveyed. That's 196 trees per acre. It's a virtual forest. I mean, it's a forest. So the challenges of trying to design anything, we have a 10,000 square foot learning experience school and a 4,300 square foot retail strip out on fronting on the farm to market, but the economics are really, really challenging. Where we are today with the current design, which is about the 10th configuration we've come up with, we would have $100,000 in tree mitigation fees, and the tree density, frankly, on our site is like 3 times the density on the adjacent church site. I've been involved in developments in a number of cities around the state, and this is a pretty challenging tree ordinance, and glad to see y'all are taking the time to study it. Our conclusion is there is a small, where the little car wash used to be on Wiederstein and the farm to market, I'm going to go ahead and buy it because it's barren of any trees, and we're going to try to average our tree coverage and try to get some accelerated credits for the trees that we're going to save. We've actually, in the last few days, I haven't had a chance to have the architect draw it up, but we've actually decided to not develop the retail strip and leave probably 40% of the property in trees. So we hope to, again, get some tree credits there, but also apply those to what we would be obligated to put on the adjacent car wash site, because it has virtually no trees on it. So anyway, glad to see that you all are spending time to study this further. We will be coming back to your staff people with a redesign of this site, which makes some pretty significant differences. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Ms. Dennis, did anyone send anything by email?
No, sir.
Okay. So moving on, the next item, we have 2 workshop discussions, the first of which is on the comprehensive plan update.
So I think this will be a presentation for both of those workshops kind of put together. First off, just want to say thanks for coming a little early in order to have the joint session with P&Z and City Council together. Before I dive into it, again, just to outline kind of the overall purpose, I think, of this meeting, aligning city staff, City Council, and P&Z on different policy values before we keep moving forward with the comp plan and UDC updates. You know, we've noticed some development policy shifts as we've worked through different applications and proposals, and we want to make sure after tonight we're all kind of moving forward on the same page. You know, and sometimes in the midst of these changes, it's important to pause and talk them through. So again, thank you guys for being here. So first, just want to walk through the major goals that we have for the joint workshop. And it's to articulate the city's position on a couple of different things. Number one, allowing smaller residential lot sizes Number 2, responding to changed conditions in southern Schertz. 3, increasing the flexibility with development regulations. And then 4, approaching the comp plan and UDC update. So just for the structure of this next part of the presentation, we'll kind of dive into each one of those on each of the slides, and then after we'll be asking for feedback from both Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council so we can work together on it. Before I get started, does anyone have any questions?
I think I have one just before we get started. Are we going to break it up into 2 sessions? We go comp plan first and have discussion, or do you want to have it?
It's on the agenda as 2 separate workshops, and I think you and I planned on handling it that way. Would that be difficult to do?
Could we pause after we do the comp plan so that we can dive into the other one?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah,
do
we'll
that
pause
then.
after each one of these 2.
Okay.
Everyone set? Okay. All right, so first, allowing smaller residential lot sizes. So the smallest single-family kind of detached lot size we have currently allowed by the UDC is 8,400 square feet, which is a 70 by 120 lot or the R2 zoning district. So over the years, we've used the Planned Development District, the PDD, kind of process to allow more variety with the lot sizes in recent neighborhoods that you've seen develop. I do want to note, though, that under this process, we haven't necessarily held firm to that minimum kind of overall mean lot size of 8,400 square feet. It's been a variety of lot sizes. We think it's important to look at this in the context of kind of the local residential housing market. So the median new home price within SCUC ISD in Schertz is around $310,000, which I think highlights this issue that we're the crux of the issue, which is this affordability and kind of diversity of housing types. Now, looking at what goes into that number, that around $310,000 home price. So among other things, we've got 4 listed here. The first 2, development fees, so engineering fees, any sort of architectural construction fees, things like that, and then land and raw material costs kind of fluctuate with that market. But the second 2, development regulation costs and lot yield, are areas that we think as a city we could have an impact kind of in this area on that price. So specifically for development regulation costs, so are the regulations that we have in place cost anything extra there? So in terms of, are our larger lots costing more for development or any other regulations like that? And then in terms of lot yield, so if we're requiring bigger lots, that means there's less lots overall, and the cost of the development doesn't change in that case. So what's then burden on each individual lot and to the home purchaser is a higher overall cost. And the last thing I want to mention on this is that we want to maintain the high quality development. I know recently in some meetings there's been associations with smaller lot sizes sometimes being associated with lower quality development. But I think over the past few meetings, the commissioners and city council members, yourselves, as you've kind of dove into your own neighborhoods or neighborhoods around you that kind of fit what you think is a quality development, you've seen these smaller lot sizes, and it's not necessarily this relationship that was previously thought. So again, after each one of these slides, I'll just invite some discussion, kind of this open dialogue between P&Z, City Council. Feel free to kick it off.
All right, thank you, Nick. Mr. Mayor?
All right. Thanks, Nick. We'll go ahead and open it up to council if any questions that you may have. Yes, Councilmember Scott.
One thing with the smaller lot sizes, I work over by Kirby, and I drive out through Benzingelman and also at Interstate 10, depending on the day. The growth all over San Antonio is just breathtaking. But when you drive over in those neighborhoods, I know that developers, I know people have to live somewhere, but those houses, oh my goodness, the yards are so small and there's so many of them and they're springing up everywhere. And I don't want to disparage those neighborhoods. That's not my intention. But we have to ask ourselves, what is the character of Schertz and where do we want to be in the future? Do you want to have houses that are packed so tightly together that the kids are, I know kids like playing in the streets, but that they're absolutely forced to, and the congestion, it is not a good look, and it's not a good vibe whenever it's just compression, it's astounding to me. And I grew up in San Antonio. I'm not longing for the good old days. I'm not looking back. I'm looking forward. But what's going on in the city, I hesitate to want to invite the deep, deep, tight compression to our neighborhood. I want to kind of preserve the character of the city and have smart growth moving ahead. And you have to ask yourself, what are you in business for? Is it only money? Because when I was on EDC, we asked it all the time. Do you want to bring in a tire shop that's going to pollute the air? It's a God almighty dollar. Do you want to bring in strip centers that have questionable morality? Because, my God, they bring in a lot of money and they can bring in tax revenue, but what kind of place do you want to live? So we have to be careful how we move ahead because we have to live in whatever kind of building that community that we build.
Okay, Councilmember Brown.
Thanks. One, I think there's a great concept here, getting together maybe even a little bit more often, but I'm sorry. I think this is great. Thank you all for showing up. Appreciate you coming together like this. We have the ability to regulate ourselves into or out of just about any situation. I know that we have a variety in town. Small lots, I know a lot of people are against them. I think that within the PDDs, they're controlled because the developer doesn't want to just go in there and do a whole bunch of, to keep the quality up. They're gonna have a variety of size lots with the smaller lots proportion. But I think we need to also take a look at other housing styles, and instead of smaller lots, maybe allow ourselves some modular homes and allow ourselves some different building materials, things along that line, because of the cost of, just changing with the times. Not to lower quality by any means, but just to adapt a little bit more so that we can, a $300,000 home is not an affordable starter home for our average wage earner in this area. It just isn't. And because of that, the price of existing homes has gone up incredibly as well, and it's difficult to find anything in the, even in the 200s that's in decent enough shape for a family to start or an older couple to move into, and as they don't need the big house anymore. So like I said, just in general, instead of worrying about the size of that lot so much, I know we don't want to go down too small, but also looking at, like I say, what we allow on those lots as well to keep it within that. So that's all I got to say.
Okay, Councilmember Hayward.
I was going to say, living where I lived, and the last time we had a discussion about, I guess, the PDDs and figuring out how that goes, I went through my neighborhood and started looking at different people's lot sizes. And if the house is the right size, the lot doesn't look so small. There's a corner house, and it's like 50 by, I guess, 120. It doesn't look small because of the house that's sitting on the lot. And then going around, there was houses that's my size, my house is 70 by 120. My neighbor's house is almost the same size, just a little bit bigger. And then there's some that's 90 by 140 in my neighborhood. I think if it's put in the right places and it flows, it doesn't look bad and it's not overly congestive. And then agreeing with Councilmember Brown, maybe we need to start looking at what we're putting on those lots and changing with some of the time and how things are going with modernization. That's all.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Thank you. I agree with what people are saying as far as aesthetically. We're looking for what appears to be more space, but I also agree with Councilman Brown that it's not necessarily the lot size that determines how it looks and feels, if it feels congested. I'm familiar with communities all over San Antonio and the area, and there's definitely communities that have a different feeling. Kirby, as you kind of get south and towards the city, there's definitely a feeling of lower maintenance maintained on the homes, and it's not being familiar with the real estate market. The average lot size, we usually go by acres, so not by frontage, but on a pre-owned home is about 0.15 acres, and that's across the board, and that's about a 50 to 60 foot lot, so that's pretty standard. but there's a huge variety of experiences within different neighborhoods. Same lot sizes, but between how they maintain their homes and their neighborhoods, and also, as we were talking about, the size of the house on the home. If you have a huge house on a small lot, everything is going to feel crammed. But we were just talking to a developer earlier, and one of the things that we have to factor in is if we're trying to develop the land, nobody's going to want to develop it if there's no money to be made. So there's a lot of things to juggle, and I think Councilman Brown mentioned that we can regulate ourselves out of development. Nobody's going to want to come here if they can't make any kind of money off of new communities. So I think it's a balance. I think we'd have to find a balance somewhere when we allow, I think the lot size is somewhat arbitrary. You could have a tiny lot, but only for a tiny house. So I think we have to keep that balance and make sure that we're, if we're shrinking the lot size, I think the fact that Schertz requires the 10-foot setback on the side, I think actually that's a huge plus for Schertz. It's not the same most other places, and some of our PDDs actually allow for a 5-foot setback, and I was told that's really the only way to have a profit there. But if we can maintain that 10-foot setback, it makes a significant difference in that feeling. So I just think, again, it's a little bit of a balanced approach. I don't say we don't have any small lots, but I think we do need to consider what's on the lot, and if we can continue to have setbacks, that will be helpful.
All right. Councilman Scagliola.
Yeah, I prefer in Schertz to set the bar high on account of entropy. Over time, things have a tendency to disintegrate and fall apart. You start with a beautiful development. What happens 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the road? Let's start planning for that eventuality. It is coming our way. I think it's understood that rooftops don't pay for themselves. Cities can't really function all that well with just masses of people in them. Otherwise, there'd be a Ruth Chris Steakhouse on every street corner in Chicago. You don't see that. Density isn't all it's cracked up to be. It really isn't. You need a certain amount of it, but if your primary focus is just to get density so that you can bring big businesses here, I think you're always going to be working in a deficit. Size of lots, okay, there are some lots that are small but aren't dense. And there are some communities out there that have relatively small houses that aren't densely packed. What gets you into problem is when you have so much density that it causes congestion within your subdivision. I mean, we have cul-de-sacs around here that they can just barely turn a fire truck around in. Up where I live, it's really interesting, the Northcliffe area. There's 2 sections in it. The front section, the ones they built, I don't know if it was first or second, but they were zoned as R6. Nice wide lots. Okay. In the back neighborhood, they went with the more condensed, congested areas, let's call it. And I was on the back of a fire truck one time, just doing a ride around, and there was an emergency on that street. That fire truck had to navigate that entire street, and I was probably more nervous than the driver was. And then the add insult, he couldn't drive forwards because the street was blocked. He had to drive backwards in order to get out of that subdivision. How much congestion is too much congestion? It seems to me that over the past couple of months or maybe years, since we intentionally did away with the smaller lots, we've been embracing planned developments. Planned developments is a workaround to getting smaller lots. And it seems like the last couple of subdivisions that we've had, disproportionate number of smaller lots, and they keep getting smaller and smaller. What's the solution? I don't know if there is a solution, but I'd kind of like to see a cap, at the very least, on the number of smaller size lots that you can have in a subdivision. That might be something worth looking into. What that percentage is, I'm not really sure. But you know, when you have 80% of your houses that are pretty much below the average, that's pushing density a little bit too far. And as far as affordable housing goes, there are two criteria to an affordable house. The one criteria that people fixate on most is, oh, well, that's a house you can afford. No, that isn't or shouldn't be the definition of affordable housing. Affordable housing is, one, a house that you can afford, provided it suits the needs of the family. It does absolutely no good to try to cram a full-size family into a home, well, that's the only one I could afford. That defeats the purpose. And what kind of community do we want to be? I love being the type of community where people can work here, which requires good jobs, so that they can afford a house in the city of Schertz. I don't want, just the cheapest houses that people can afford. I waited 15 years before I could buy my own house. I didn't get it my first job. Sir, that's all I have.
Right. Councilmember Dalla.
First, let me say thanks to the guys on P&Z. Appreciate all y'all's time and effort and all the conversations that we had when I was on P&Z and even subsequent. But I've said it a number of times, and I'll say it again. I'm absolutely adamantly opposed to the idea of establishing R6 and R7 zoning size lots by right. As Councilman Scagliola mentioned, the PDD can be interpreted as a way to work around that. I think more the PDD is an intent to negotiate some other benefits or features in a community that we might not otherwise get in the standard UDC. And maybe we need to look at, how we tweak the PDDs and what our standards are going to be for that. I don't think that some sort of cap on a percentage of smaller lots is necessarily a bad idea. That's definitely one solution. If we're looking at somebody that wants to bring in a larger percentage of small lots, maybe we also have the additional requirement to require additional park space, so there is a place for the kids to go. There's a lot of variables that we can look at and try to get, as you mentioned here on the bottom of the slide, good, high-quality development. When it comes to affordability, that's a word that I've used quite a bit since I've been up here on the dais, and my idea of affordability is that we have somebody coming in working in the Schertz Civil School District as a first-year teacher or a first-year police officer out of the academy, with a spouse, have the opportunity to purchase a decent home in the city of Schertz. What that number is, I don't know. It's probably somewhere in the mid-200s. And that's kind of been in my mind the number that I've been looking at for us to try to find at least some housing stock that reaches down to that price point. It definitely doesn't need to be a majority of it, but I think we need to, have a place where people that come and work and support this community also have the opportunity to live and play in this community. With an average price point of $310,000 plus and going up by the minute with the cost of materials and development costs nowadays, it's going to be a struggle to get to that point, and it may not be achievable if we want to maintain high quality development. But I think it's a goal to try to reach for, and that's kind of been my entire thrust over this discussion with affordability and lot sizes. Is the number one driver of the price of a new home is the size of the lot. 40-foot, 50-foot, 60-foot, 80-foot size lot. That's how the developers price their lots to the builders. And when you have a $50,000 lot, you can't put a $150,000 house on there and absorb that cost into the cost of the house and have something that somebody's going to pay for. And so that's where, this discussion needs to come about. And, another idea for the smaller lots is, maybe we look at a targeted area where we will allow, with a PDD, a development to occur with a disproportionate smaller lot size, but then we also look at some areas that we reserve for exclusive large lot size. On the southern part of Schertz, I look at, all the area impacted by the J-Loose. For me, maintaining the large lot size to honor the recommendations of the J-Loose plan is non-negotiable. That's a pretty substantial area. There's thousands of acres out there that fall underneath that we need to ensure that we maintain large lots, and I'm talking, 5-acre, maybe even 10-acre lots, depending on what the next J-Loose round recommendations are going to be. I also feel that the areas along Cibolo Creek, on our shared border with Cibolo, is an area that we need to maintain, minimum larger lot size, half-acre, 3-acre, 5-acre type lots. And again, this is not a secret. I've said this a number of times, but in '98, there's some areas down there where Cibolo Creek was over 4,000 feet wide. I don't want to have a subdivision abutting Cibolo Creek where we put 200 homes in an area that is not in the floodplain, but we know in '98 it did flood before. And it certainly is appropriate to put restrictions in place or to mandate that we have larger lot sizes in that area. And so there's, I think that we can find a good blend on how to make things happen. We just need to, continue to have these conversations.
Councilman Davis.
Yeah, I have a problem with, we keep on throwing out the word density. In case a lot of people have forgotten, we're in the San Antonio Metroplex area. This place is growing hand over fist, and it's going to keep on growing in this entire 35 corridor. To me, it's not about density. If you're putting in a development of larger lots and you've got 150 lots, if you go to a smaller lot and you go to 180, people are still going to complain about the traffic and the fact that you put in 150 or 180 houses. To me, it's more about flexibility in our community. Councilman Dollard brought up some good points. You've got areas around the creek where potentially it could flood. Well, it doesn't matter if you have a large lot or a small lot. If it floods, it's not an area where you really want to build. We have some unique topography in this area. Between the creeks, we have other restrictions because of the base. So to me, it's all about flexibility. It's a matter of finding the right size or the right type of development, whether it's multifamily, whether it's townhomes, garden homes. We talk about lot size. Well, I mean, it could be a garden home where somebody, again, it's one thing if you want to have a 3-acre property and you want to get on your riding tractor, but there's a lot of people in our community that don't want to take care of 2 acres or 3 acres. We have folks in our community that, as they get older, want to downsize. We've got folks in our community that, as their kids grow up and move out, what are their options? Move to one of our surrounding towns because you can't afford to find anything in Schertz, or you can't afford to rent anything in Schertz, or there's no rental properties or anything, or apartments or anything like that. So to me, it's about flexibility and finding the right mix within our community. I agree to a point with Councilman Scagliola. I don't want to lower the bar. And I think one of the benefits we have out of the PDDs and allowing some flexibility is, look at the PDDs that we're doing. We're putting in walking trails and parks, and we're putting in those amenities that make Schertz the premier community that we want it to be. So to me, it's not about lowering our standards or just simply looking at a square footage requirement and saying, I'm sorry, the only thing I want is an 8,400 square foot lot and nothing smaller. Because of the unique nature of Schertz, I think we just need to have some flexibility built into the system. And depending on who wants to build what where, maybe that includes some smaller lots in that particular area. I don't think that ultimately, when you look at the layout of Schertz, that we would become overrun with nothing but small lots that are going to have everybody living on top of each other. But I do think we need the flexibility. And again, it's one thing to have the jobs in here, but, you know, jobs come and go. Companies come and go. We've had some large companies that paid rather well in Schertz leave Schertz. And it's nice when we get someone new, and it's nice when someone replaces that place. But in the end run, you know, a median new home price of $310,000, and I'm sure it's going to go nowhere but up. I think we just need to ensure that somehow in our plan we have the flexibility to cover a wider range of housing options for the people in our community.
All right. Thank you, Councilman Davis. Before I pass it on to, back to the committee, first of all, thank you for your participation. As you can see, both council and the committee are facing several challenges with land development, and we are slightly misaligned. There is changes, you know, in conditions here in Schertz, because you're seeing it filter out from San Antonio, and it's coming down this way, down our corridor. And there has to be a consensus of, you know, there is a consensus. We want small houses, but how many? What percentage, I think, is the question. What is acceptable? What can we agree on? Because the PDD actually has made it flexible for developers to allow smaller houses, maybe not an acceptable rate that we're comfortable with. So before I turn it back to the chair, my question is, what is the medium average lot size? What is that right now? Do you have any idea on the PDD? Any idea?
We wouldn't have one for overall development.
Okay. How about the number of R6s? Percentage of number of R6s, R7s? Do we have anything set? Nothing set. So I think that's what we need to do, is see what percentage of R6s and R7s we will allow in a PDD that we can agree on. That when we're faced with these challenges, it's acceptable to the Planning and Zoning Committee. So when it hits the council, we are totally aligned in our decisions. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Commissioner Outlaw. It's yours.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and council. We certainly appreciate you taking the time. As I mentioned to the mayor earlier, as a group, we're kind of floundering right now because we have the written rules in the UDC and the comp plan that aren't necessarily aligning with the present feelings is probably not the right word, but, you know, the council members that are sitting up there tonight aren't the ones that wrote these rules, and things change, but we're kind of stuck trying to enforce, you know, we work for you folks. You know, basically, you provide the guidance and write the rules, and we enforce those. And it's kind of where we're stuck right now. The perceptions and opinions have changed, but the rules haven't. And we're hoping by the joint discussions tonight, we have a little bit of guidance, and a little bit more insight as to what you folks are looking for as we go on, and I'm sure staff is taking notes for the same thing. So, with that, let me open it up to the commissioners. Anyone have any questions or comments they'd like to?
Thank you, sir. For people looking for tree mitigation, the reason those rules were written, and this is 10, 15 years ago, because everybody came in and clear cut the lot. And then planted a couple of trees and said, yep, that'll do. So we had to put a stop to it. When you start looking at some of the plans, and we were just handed this evening, I'm about ready to rip it up and throw it away. You got 5-foot setbacks on a 5,400-foot lot. You're going to have room for a swimming pool, so I don't know where they're going to put it, unless they do it in the living room. Like was mentioned, we have to make sure we give plenty of room for floodplain. In 1998, I had 2 foot of water in my house. Not in my yard, in the house. And my house sits up quite a ways. 30-some-odd thousand dollars to fix it, and I did all the work. So I'm well aware of the possible problems. But majority of the time, the owners don't look at floodplain maps. And if they did, they would probably run like hell away from here. We have a lot of floodplain. A lot of water comes down here from Garden Ridge, a few other places. I don't know what the council really wants, but like I say, if you want, you can have a copy of this and look at it, because as far as I'm concerned, it's worthless. Thank you.
Oh, I'll go. A lot of the guidelines that P&Z is operating on, and there's 3 or 4 of us up here that have been on P&Z for quite a while, longer than all the council members have been on council except for Mr. Scagliola. It goes back to the charrette we had when, or the multiple charrettes that we had that we discussed the North and South Schertz. The sentiment back then was, leave the southern area of our city as it is. Agriculture, big lots, no density. And then we wrote the comp plan, and that's what the comp plan reflects. We're supposed to operate according to the comp plan, not pick and choose what we want from it and what we don't want from it. I advocated for a long time that we needed a new comp plan. We're finally getting one. I hope we get one. We're finally getting it. The city is developing too fast. It's changing way too fast to have a document that's 10 or 11 years old, or to have a planning instrument that's that old. We need a lot more work done on planning in the short and long term, because as you've seen, things have changed. The last 5 developments that we've seen, including this one and another one we're going to talk about tomorrow night at P&Z, a majority of the lots have been the small lots, the 50-foot lots. That's not what we decided to do 10 or 12 years ago. And I agree mostly with Mr. Scagliola, because he was around back then when we came up with all these plans. If there's going to be a change, P&Z needs direction. And if that comes from staff, or it comes from a comp plan, or if it comes from city council, we need direction, or else we're going to continue to be button heads. My main concern about small lot size neighborhoods is it's fine when it's being built and being under construction. But as the neighborhood fills up, it turns into a car lot. When you drive in the neighborhood, all you see is cars. Cars in the street. People have 2- and 3-car garages, but they park in the street. I don't know why, but they park in the street, and that's what detracts from the neighborhood, and that's what makes things not as attractive as they could be. Does a larger size lot change that? It does in my neighborhood, and it does in the neighborhoods that surround me. That, you know, we don't have a majority of the cars in the street. So it's an aesthetic thing for me, you know, to not have so many small lots. Someone mentioned that we can put a percentage of small lots, medium, large lots in a PDD. We discussed that we mentioned that on P&Z a few months ago. It's a good idea. We can do it. How do we formalize that, and what percentages do we set? I'd like to do that. We did have success in Parklands a while back. Parklands came in with a tic-tac-toe setup of streets for their street layout. We kicked it back and said that's not what we want. And they came back and changed it a little bit, not as much as we would like, but you know, curved streets and not the tic-tac-toe setup that you find in a lot of small lot neighborhoods, I think would be more attractive. We need more imagination from our developers, not just these really, you know, 90-degree corner neighborhoods. Give us some curves, give us some parks, give us some pocket parks that make the neighborhood stand out from what you normally get in a small lot neighborhood. And I think that would be good too. Thank you, sir.
I've been through most of this discussion over the last 20 years of what we're going to do with subdivisions. I'm truly not into making drastic changes to the UDC about subdivisions. We have survived quite a number of years now working to build and develop what Schertz is. A lot of the development in Schertz has already occurred. Yes, we have land left to be developed, but almost all of it comes with issues. All of the south side is encumbered by the ACOS and Randolph. And shame on us as a city if we crimp Randolph in any shape, fashion, or form and cause or partially cause its demise. That's suicide for this city. The northern end of Schertz has water problems. It's already been mentioned by several of you. And I think Ken just a moment said we had water flowing down from other places. That water's got to have somewhere to go. And it's going to come into our city. So we have to look at those issues as we look at what we think we want in terms of a subdivision. There are going to always be requests for subdivisions from developers. Some of those requests are good for this city, and some of them just are not. The city has to look at those and determine whether they meet health, safety standards that this city has set for itself. And if they don't, then we should and need to be held responsible for turning them down. Because ultimately they cost the existing taxpayers more money if we take on some of this stuff. We know that for a fact. We have streets that we've taken on from developers. And right now, those streets have failed. And it would cost us a ton of money to go in and fix them all. Where does that money come from? We're going to tax the current citizens of our city. So I'm not for costing us more money. I'm for making sure that it's done right up front. And if that means holding somebody to a higher standard, then I have no problems with that. Because those standards have to be set by groups, committees, it's like you're looking at here, and once they're set, we need to uphold them. There are always exceptions to every law that's ever been made. And we'll never remember, as Michael up there said, all of the different issues that go with any particular piece of property. But there's probably not one that we haven't already had in this city that we're not going to have again in the future. So I'm not for an immediate gross wholesale change in our UDC, nor the lots. We need to clarify how we want to use a PDD and get that set in the minds of the people who are going to work this stuff, whether it's city council services or planning and zoning. And so that to me is the biggest issue that we're faced with right now, is how do we go and where do we go for the future to keep things in check.
Just want to take the time to thank City Council for having us here. Introduce myself. My name is Earl Platt. I know we don't have any name tags up here. You know most of these guys. I'm probably the youngest on the council and the newest, so I kind of bring a fresh perspective here. And I've seen this over the last year and a half that I've been here, and the smaller lot sizes come into play over and over again. It seems like every development we have, at some point in time, they come in with garden homes and 5,000 square foot lots, and that justification is to make affordable housing, to get more people in and make Schertz more diverse and a better opportunity for people to come in. I just look at that from a business perspective and from historically, what I would challenge the city to do is to look at that perception and see how that works out. See how that works out in other cities when you bring in smaller lot sizes, cheaper houses over time. Because what you see over time is it does not typically lead to a good thing. It generally creates more and more problems. So what I'd like to see is the city define their position. If they want to have more affordable houses at the expense of a smaller lot, or more affordable houses and more people come in based on different builders that can offer, as some of the council members said, different designs, building materials. There's other ways to do that than just decreasing the lot sizes and allowing these developers to come in and slam more houses in so their overhead is higher. A good example of that would be the homestead. We look at that on this council as kind of our shining star. And when you look at those home prices, you can see this number is pretty high. 310, is that a brand new custom built home? Is that where the number comes from?
New homes in SEUCISD that are also in Schertz.
Okay. So that's about the average price for a brand new custom spec house that you can get in that community. But there's a wide range of prices from the 240s, 210s, up to 400s. So when I look at these numbers, it really elicits an emotional response, but it's not what's actually out there. I think we really need to look at and take the time to focus on how we can get more developers in with a cheaper house without decreasing the lot sizes, and some alternatives that way.
I'd like to echo, thank you for having us here tonight. My name is Ricky Haynes, Planning and Zoning. One thing I've noticed about our new developments in the city of Schertz is the amount of street parking that we create. We build nice houses. We build a 2-car garage. We can't get a half-ton pickup in the garage because they're so small. You might be able to get 2 little SUVs in there. So what we're seeing is with this new development, we have a family of 4, let's say 2 high school kids that drive. They can't get one of their cars in the garage, and the rest of their garage is full of their stuff because they use it as storage. So those cars end up, one ends up on the driveway, and the other 2 end up on the street. And you multiply that, like where I live at Willow Grove, 305, I think, houses, and multiply that times 3 or 4, and that's the amount of cars we have in the street in our little area there. So we have to navigate going down our street. We see an opening, we pull over, we let the other car by. And it's starting to get increasingly bad. We're having Air Force people leave. They've been deployed somewhere else. New families are moving in. And now we're seeing one-ton trucks, construction trucks with their compressors and stuff parked on the street with their other 2 3/4-ton trucks that they use for their businesses parked on the street on the other side of the street of their house. I don't know about the code for street parking, but I know that it shouldn't be like that. And I think maybe if we make the, it's not going to sound funny, but if we have the builders create more garage space with what they're building, we can eliminate some of that street parking, which I think is going to be the major problem here in the future with these 300, 500, 600 home developments that are coming in. So that's all I had to say. Thanks again.
Nick, let me apologize up front. As you were talking and council was talking, I made some notes, and so I apologize up front if there are things you're going to address in your next workshop. Okay, but they aren't really organized. It's just kind of in the order they came up. I wanted to talk about amendments to the comp plan because 2 of those came before council, both with recommendations of disapproval from P&Z, and you folks chose to approve them, which is certainly, I mean, that's what you're for. And it wasn't so much, P&Z's objection wasn't so much that the comp plan was out of date, it was the fact, particularly with me, that the comprehensive plan and the sector plans were community consensus documents. They were not established by individuals, and I just felt it was wrong to amend such a document with an individual application. I thought, in reality, the comp plan is out of date and probably needs to be changed. We just didn't think that was the way to do it. But the comprehensive plan and the sector plans present a vision of how we wanted our community to look. And the problem we're up against right now is that's not what is selling on the market. And so I understand where the developers and the builders are coming from. They want to build what is selling, and that's not necessarily what our vision of the community was. So the question is, what's going to drive the ship, the way we want the city to be or the way the developers want the city to be? And like most things, there's probably a compromise somewhere in there, okay? We talk a lot about smaller lots, and I don't think lot size by itself is the real issue. I sat up there and I looked at, and Saddlebrook was kind of the last big one that we looked at, and I voted against it. And then as I'm driving home, I'm thinking, what does an R7 development look like? Well, imagine my surprise when I got the plat for Savannah Square where I live, and we're basically an R7 subdivision. I'm on a corner lot, so mine's 60 by 100. My neighbor next door is 50 by 100, and that's kind of the norm as you go through there. So that kind of opened my eyes to the fact that lot size by itself is maybe not the issue. But what I'm seeing in what's coming to planning and zoning is a combination of small lots and big houses. That's where the side yard setback and all of the setbacks come in. Is the more setback we require in any size lot, the smaller the house, the smaller the footprint is left for a house. And this is going to be an issue as we discuss a couple of PDDs at our regular meeting tomorrow night. Side yard setbacks in particular, I championed, and I have fought this battle for 20 years because from the fire department side. We have, and certainly as you look around Schertz, you will find, I don't know if we ever got to 5-foot setbacks, but you will find, for instance, Councilman Davis up there in Carolina Crossing, those are 7.5-foot side setbacks. But we were finally able to successfully argue for 10 feet based on fire safety. That puts a minimum of 20 feet between houses. It gives the firefighters more room to work, and it reduces what we call exposure to adjacent structures. I used to have a photograph, the house 2 doors down from you, when it burned several years ago. The bulk of the fire was in the back corner, and as we arrived, it was basically blowing out the corner window. And the wood fence that was 7.5 feet away is basically gone. That's how intense a fire is. So I've always championed maintaining the 10-foot side setbacks as a fire safety issue. We've made some compromises. The last time we did was in, why do I never remember the name of the big one out in 1518, Crossvine, on garden homes. But what is required if you're less than 10, at least one wall of those 2 houses has to be 1 hour fire rated with no openings, no doors, no windows, no vents, nothing. And that was a trade-off to allow them. And that one, as long as I'm on that particular PDD amendment, their definition of a garden home certainly wasn't mine. You know, when I think of a garden home, I think of these little houses over here just down the street from us. No, their idea of a garden home is a long, narrow, 2-story, 2,400 square foot house. Okay, because apparently there's a market out there. People want a big house, but they don't want a big yard. But again, that was a compromise where we were able to, what we considered to be, maintain the fire safety and give the developers a little bit. But so when we see them come in and they want a 50 by 120 lot, that's not particularly bad in itself, but now they want 5-foot side yard setbacks so they can still put a 2,400 square foot house on it. And Councilman Davis, you mentioned density. That's kind of a fuzzy word, but it's kind of building is always ahead of road development, and unfortunately, we used to have what the city, I think, was a fairly good way of the developers paying their fair share towards building the streets, and the legislature took that away from us. And so now more of that construction burden falls on the city and the taxpayers who have lived here, and they've paid for all their stuff, and now we've got to pay for somebody else's. PDDs, Planned Development Districts, if you look at the Unified Development Code, a PDD was supposed to spur innovation. And basically when council passed the ordinance that prohibited R6, new R6 and R7 subdivisions, it wasn't so much the lot size as it was they were tired of the grid subdivisions, just straight streets and houses everywhere. And since I've been on P&Z, which I think is 3, maybe 4 years, it's hard for me to remember sometimes. We have acted on PDDs, and we have approved small lots as a percentage, and usually they were relatively small percentages of the overall development, and the other thing is they were dispersed within the development, and that provided flexibility for the builder or the developers, he was laying out lots. You know, if he had a odd-shaped piece, well, maybe he fits one or two of the smaller lots in there, but they were dispersed. And when we came back to Saddlebrook, all I saw was the traditional grid layout. Yeah, they bent the streets a little bit, but you know, it still looked like a grid layout. And what they did is they grouped them, all the 50 by 100, or 55, I think they're 55 by 120s or something. They're here, and then you got the group of 60 by 120s, and then over here, then there are the 70s. So we're kind of back to that grid layout again. It's just something to think about. And the other thing, because flexibility is certainly a good thing, and you know, we talked about the comp plan. The problem is a lot of the people that own the property in Southern Schertz are not the same people now that input their opinions to the comp plan. Okay, we had established agricultural families living out there that didn't want development. They didn't want anything to do with the city. They didn't want to be annexed, you know. Well, now those people have moved on, and in some cases their heirs, they're not interested in farming, and, you know, they want to sell the property. So now that, you know, that whole thing is kind of swung back the other way. And amenities came up, and one question is private versus public. You know, a lot of the things, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but my understanding was, yes, Saddlebrook has got a couple of nice parks, and they've got a lot of nice hike and bike trails, but they're private. They're only for the people that live there. So what did the city gain from that? And I want to touch a little bit on history because it keeps coming up. The rules are, you know, we change the rules all the time. So you can find places in Schertz that may have 5-foot side yard setbacks. I know you can at least find 7.5. And Rhine Valley keeps coming up. Well, Rhine Valley was originally platted and subdivided as unincorporated Bear County. We inherited that one, okay? So we're kind of stuck with it. So I would just like to urge council a little caution when you start. You are going to see what I call legacy things out there. They were, for instance, I told you Savannah Square would probably, if you looked at it today, would be an R7. Well, that was developed. I bought my house in 1989, and it was right there in that late 80s that it was developed before we had a lot of the current rules. So please, just as you're looking out there and you see things, you know, just be cautious that they may have been before they may have popped up before the rules were built. And just a quick comment on about the median house price. The thing with medians is you know, you start at the top and you list every one of them, and then you go back up until you find the one that's exactly in the middle. And so this 310,000, it sounds reasonable to me, because when you look at what's being sold out there in southwestern Schertz, they probably skew the numbers, I would think. So, but the one thing I want to say is and Nick, that's a very good slide up there about yes, those are the things that go into driving home prices, but what's missing up there is what's the profit margin. You know, I have no idea what a builder makes. You know, if he sells me a $300,000 house, what did it really cost him to build that house? I don't know, but anyway, Mr. Mayor, back to you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Outlaw. There's certainly a lot of good points that were made. The most important, I think, is that you know, we certainly don't want to compromise or jeopardize the mission at Joint Base San Antonio Randolph. The other question is, this one's for Mr. James. How do we go about putting a percentage on the PDD?
So I think, Mayor, if I might, and this is your mistake, because Nick was laughing, going, how long till you get up, Brian? I say, I'm not getting up at all. So if you'll permit me, sort of what you get with me is more talking than you probably want. But just maybe I think to frame the issue up a little bit. I haven't heard anybody say we want to build any kind of development around JBSA, around Randolph, that creates an issue there. I think everybody's aligned on that. I think everybody's aligned that we need to look at the areas that flood in floodplain, and let's not put stuff there that's going to flood. I think there's agreement on that concept. We have to figure out how we define it going forward. I think everybody would agree that if we have a plan, if we have an updated comp plan that lays out the vision, that kind of gives us that guide going forward, that's really helpful to get everybody on the same page, let everybody know it's expected to move forward. I'm not hearing any disagreement there. I think that the thing that I would say is I've also not heard anybody say, just let them do whatever they want. Any amount of small lots is okay. Not heard that at all. I've also heard a fair number of people saying, if we stuck with the UDC straight zoning and said minimum lot size is 8,400 square feet, I could see where that would be problematic in a community in terms of diversity of housing. And so I think we've kind of bookended it for staff and maybe the community and everyone going forward. So permit me again a minute. I think the challenge that we have, and some of you have heard this before, is as much as we try to craft regulations, we cannot regulate whatever we would define as a quality development. You will have developers and builders come in saying, look, we're going to make our money, which we'd all say is fine, by doing a really high quality development. People will pay more for that. It's sustainable, something we're proud of. We build a reputation. That helps us the next community that we go to. I think part of it, and you heard this on the tree video, interestingly enough, is not every piece of property is the same. So what I have heard for years from some of you guys that we like is we like the trees being preserved. Well, if you've got a lot of trees to start with and your topo is pretty good that you don't have to do a lot of cut and fill for drainage, you can preserve some of those trees, and builders tend to because it increases the value of that lot and that house and whatnot. If you've got topography, a little bit of roll and up and down, that is nice. When we talk about the neighborhoods we like, they tend to have some of that is good. But not every piece of property is that way. We have a lot of pieces of properties that are flat, and they've been farmed for decades, century even. There's not a tree on them. And the look of that subdivision going in is very different on the front end, and that becomes the challenge with it. And so one of the things that we have is we can't, as much as we try, dictate the vision of that developer. Because frankly, we have some developers who say, look, we try to do a quality product, but it is a starter home project, and it's not going to be as nice, not going to have the same amenity, it can't have the same lot size. People want to buy a bigger house, and you know, because they've got a lot of stuff to put in, they tend to want a bigger house. You have some people, again, want a smaller house, but a lot of people want, how much house can I get for my money? And so let's put more house on the smaller lot, because that maybe is what they can afford, and they've got a family, and they've got the things that they've got. And that's really where the challenge, I think, comes in. So all of that being said, Mayor, we can certainly craft a system with the UDC that says, here's the range that developers have to operate in. So we can go back to generally your median and mean lot size, and what does that need to be? So you have to balance the smaller lots with the bigger lots. We can go back in and we can say, you can only have a certain percentage of the lots, typically, within this lot size if we want to, and offset by bigger lots. We can try to craft in things either through a PDD or a normal standards that builds in a bit more curvilinear to the road, which we like, that builds in a certain amount of open space, whether it's public or private or a combination, trail amenities and things like that. We can do that. We can go through. Ultimately, the question is what are we sort of okay with? Because the challenge is, I've heard some people kind of say, man, these 7,200 square foot lots are really small. I've heard other people say, that's not a bad lot size. That's what my house is. And so I think we can get there. I think what staff needed to understand, though, and what I'm hearing is there's not necessarily a consensus as to what that needs to be. We have some different views that we have to work through, and it's not necessarily going to be a simple, easy thing of just your minimum lot size is this. The last thing I'll say, this is what you get, is the challenge with that and the challenge with the PDD is that requires a lot of work for staff. And so when we hear people lament, it takes a long time to get through the process, that's part of what tends to take a long time. Because occasionally we'll have a developer walk in and go, here's my vision, and we go, oh, wow, that's really great. That's really easy. But I'll look to the planners who can nod, and they'll tell you that 90% of the time, that's not what it is. 90% of the time, it's coming in and saying, I'm trying to maximize lot yield, I'm trying to reduce lot cost, which is why everybody wants to do a narrow lot as opposed to a wide lot, reduces your development cost. And it becomes this thing that staff has to push on and work, and the clearer vision that we've got, the easier that becomes. So we can do it, Mayor, yes. I will say, I think it is going to not necessarily be a quick thing that we're going to work out in a month. I think we're going to have to really work through and hash it out, which is fine. But what I will say is that part of what we're trying to get is how long we're going to take for the comp plan, how long we're going to take for the UDC, because I think the big issue, the biggest issue staff would say, it's this issue of kind of what we want our single-family residential development in neighborhoods to look like. Sorry, it's a really long answer, but we can do that.
All right, thank you, thank you. With that, I'll go ahead and open it back up. Councilmember Scott?
Thank you, and it was very enlightening to hear from P&Z. Thank you so much for your comments. I have 3 points I want to face. The first one was how I started this whole, my contribution to the discussion. With Kirby, there are some very nice areas in Kirby. There are some beautiful neighborhoods that are extremely well maintained. The ones that I was referring to is 100% new development, 100% new lots that are very thin, narrow lots, and they're super affordable, but they are not aesthetically pleasing. I'm with Councilwoman Whitaker on finding a balance. I loved Commissioner Ken. I'm not sure if that's your name. It's you right there. Are you Ken? Yes. I loved your comments about wanting to tear up the document you were looking at, because I could feel your passion and your love for Schertz. That rocked my world. It was great. I found out that whenever, well, I'm jumping around. I'm sorry. Let me stay on my path. I feel you about the lot sizes being small. I was shocked on some of the tree mitigation proposals. When I moved into my neighborhood, I thought it was all farmland. And Hal Baldwin told me later, no, it was full of beautiful trees, and they came in and they mowed them all down. And oh my God, it took 20 years for them to grow back, and it was sad. And we were lucky to buy one on a green belt that, alas, is no more. Things change. But I like trees, and I like them a lot. And I was shocked, no disrespect to anybody here, whenever a question was raised, why can't we have the same standard for barren land? Oh my God, some of these trees are as old as the state of Texas, and they add beauty, and it's part of life, you know, so thank you, Commissioner, for saying that. Not only, also, Commissioner Outlaw, I have seen your house before, and I've noticed over in Savannah, because I live over there, there's some smaller lot sizes, and the houses are nice, and they look fantastic. I think as long as it's aesthetically pleasing, that's fine. But on my own street, Old Moss, they're big streets, and people do park utility vehicles, and you can still get around them as long as there's large enough streets. That's a good thing. It's not only an aesthetic issue, but I put it before you, it's a safety issue. So if we have these tiny streets, like my son that lives on Live Oak on a very small street, a fire truck can hardly get down that street when you have 2 cars parked on either side of it. And I think I covered all my bases, lot sizes, tree mitigation, Savannah. Oh, the Schertz, am I saying it right? Schertz, how do I say? Schertz, thank you. I went to some of those, and they were very well attended. We had a bunch of people from Schertz coming out and giving their vision of the plan and where they want the city to go, and that was a long time ago. My gravest concern tonight is there's a relatively few number of people making decisions for many thousands plus future generations, and I feel that we need to ask the residents what they want. And I believe I'm done. Thank you.
Right. Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
Thank you. So I'll try not to take up too much time, but I wanted to kind of re-attack a couple things. I like numbers, and it's really important to me when we talk specific numbers to be as accurate as possible because they have an impact. And along with numbers, I feel like it's important to talk about things that are measurable. So I think, a lot of people have similar ideas, but we're trying to kind of articulate how we can measure those things. And I think that's important. I think, Brian, you put out there a lot of measurable things that we could look at and implement that would get us the result that we're looking for, which is an aesthetically pleasing, high-quality community. But with regard to specific numbers, I just wanted to mention again, with regard to Homestead, since that was mentioned as kind of like a star in the community, in the last 12 months, 44 homes have sold. Of those 44 homes, 3 of them were under $250,000. 34 of those homes were over $300,000, and the median sales price, or actually average, it was actually the same, was $354,000 in Homestead. So Homestead they also are also paying for that huge amenity center, so they've have to cover those costs. But as far as numbers go, I just wanted to throw that back out there that's not, that's not on the lower end. There's nothing in there that really is under the 250 mark. And so back to the measurable things that I think were a good suggestion is maintaining a higher setback, side setback. So in the crossvine, the PDD does allow for a 5-foot setback. I will tell you, and the few streets in there that are not winding really do have that, cross that tic-tac-toe board feeling, and a lot less desirable than the rest of the community. In our current market right now, they're all going to sell. But this market's not going to stay the way it is, and down the road, those types of roads and communities that are like that are going to be lesser desirable. So I think the winding streets, I don't know what the verbiage is on that, but they have to look like this or something. That's, I think, something that would be a good, something to implement that in the requirements that they cannot be 90-degree turns or, I don't know, some type of curving streets is required. Maintaining existing trees, yes, clear-cut communities are no good. And if you can, I'm not a builder, but setting particular standards for building quality, I know that you can have, 2x4s or 2x6s. They can be this many feet apart. They can be this many feet. There are certain ways to require construction materials, for example, siding. Some of the communities I think that are lower cost, lower quality, that end up kind of deteriorating faster, don't have like hardy plank or, the concrete, the cement fiber, anyway. The non-wood siding product, so requiring certain building products like that, we're not going to see wood rot. That's one way to see faster deterioration. So keeping those building quality standards higher, curving streets, maintaining trees. That was interesting about pointing out that the Saddlebrooks grouping of the lots, I noticed that too. I didn't know that we could say, hey, don't do that. I think we should say don't do that because it does, like these are all packed in here and these are all packed in over here. And even though these are smaller, it all feels packed in because they're all the same. And it has, I think that one of the terms that people don't like to see is cookie cutter neighborhoods. And that's what creates a cookie cutter neighborhood when you see everything next to one another that looks the same. So requiring those, however many smaller lot sizes we allow in a community, but to have them spread out throughout and not allowing them to be clumped together. Hold on. a comment was made earlier today that apparently builders are not super creative lately. And again, because of the market and in the San Antonio metro area, the demand for housing is super high. They don't have to be creative. People are going to buy it. But I do think that that is where Schertz can set itself apart. I promise you, I am all over San Antonio all the time. And Schertz definitely stands out as being different than a lot of communities. And it's it doesn't have the cookie cutter, streets lining up and boom, 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 all looking the same. But it's not necessarily about the street or the lot sizes. It has to do with all of these different things that we were talking about. Last thing, there's a new community opening up with smaller homes. Is Orchard Park? That's in Schertz, right? Meritage Homes. Okay, on their website it says Schertz, but anyway, it's right on the border. So just so you get an idea, Meritage is a good builder. They build a quality product. Their 1,600 square foot home starts at $300,000. So it is. I mean, building costs are skyrocketing. So it's harder and harder to get those lower priced homes, but I can tell you that buyers today are not, I think at one time they were trying to get more for their money, but in my experience, the average buyer is not trying to get the highest square footage for their money. I mean, they're trying to get a good value. But I'm working with people all the time that are understanding that maybe to get a better quality product in their price range, they need to go smaller, and they're okay doing that. And I think that's what we should consider. So, but I think there's a lot of measurable things that you can add in there that will give us what we're looking for. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Brown.
Thanks. Again, I don't want to drone on a lot of this stuff, but great points from all of you guys. The floodplain topography doesn't lend itself to, standards. We should probably have more shoulds than wills written into some of our rules. To give the staff some flexibility, because when you see these things, your experience, your knowledge of developmental planning and whatnot, I think it's really critical. And when you can say it should be this, and I recommend that, based on that, versus it must be this, and I can't change. To give you guys some flexibility, I think it's critical as we move forward through these things. Just a couple little recap things too. Just so you know, Homestead, there is one home for sale, spec home, not tricked out custom home, $488,990. Scott Felder, 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage, 2,390 square feet. It will be gone next week. Okay, so prices are crazy. They are really crazy. Yeah, and again, that's whether Schertz wants it or not. That's what the market is driving. Okay, and then you have another developer that advertises that it's in Schertz when it's not, because everybody wants to be in Schertz. It's drawing business by falsely claiming that it's in Schertz. So I mean, it's just the reality out there. Parking. Great point. Maybe a little bit larger lot with a different product on it. Maybe we can allow a new home with a carport versus a enclosed garage. That allows the builder to save a little bit of money, but if it's done right, I'm just on a little flexibility. I'm not saying we need to have a 400 home subdivision with that, but in those oddball lots or something like that, because I agree. Cars need to come off the streets and be put in their driveways and under their protective coverings. But other than that, thank you all very much. I appreciate it. And can't get there fast enough moving forward.
All right, Councilmember Davis.
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to the members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. For anybody that thinks their job is fun or our job is fun, I don't think they quite understand what all goes into all this. Especially the points brought up by Commissioner Outlaw. I'm with you. I'm not advocating big houses on small lots. And I attended all those meetings back in the day when I first moved here with the design charrettes and the sector plans and everything else. And you guys are absolutely right. We have a comp plan, but unfortunately a comp plan is a plan. It's not a rule book. It's not a concrete guide. And unfortunately, I think ours is a little bit out of sync. I used to attend city council sitting out there when I first moved here, and I've said this several times. I remember all the folks from South Schertz coming in here saying, it's a rural community. We don't want any development. We don't want any development. And I've been sitting here lately having some of the same folks, actually, and some of their dependents, that now, their heirs that now own the property, coming in here and saying, what are you guys and gals doing? I have property down here and I can't do anything with it. I don't want to have a farm. So it's a really fine line. It's a tough thing to do. I don't envy anybody on council, including myself, and I don't envy anybody on planning and zoning. Again, you're absolutely right. We do need to update the comp plan, and again, from my perspective, I just think as we go forward, we need to make sure that we've got some kind of flexibility built in because of the unique challenges that we have within our community between flooding and the base and everything else. And again, things are going to change. They're going to change fast and slow, and we're going to have a building boom, and then it's going to drop off, and we're not going to do anything, and then it's going to speed up again. So, again, I don't think we're out of sync that much with planning and zoning. I just think that we just need to make sure that we keep our communication lines open and just look at a little bit of flexibility as things pop up. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Haywood.
I'm sorry. The one thing I was thinking about is when we're talking about setbacks, and then the one neighborhood where they're planning to put the houses further along so that the driveways are longer. I think that's something that we need to think about going forward when we're talking about planning that, because living on just my block, there's a house and they have kids there, and everybody drives, and we're talking 7 cars, 4 in the driveway and 3 in the street. And I like the idea of not putting all lot sizes together, mixing them up in the neighborhood so it doesn't look so bad. I know on my street, or getting to my street in Belmont, and we have some winding roads, and I live off of a bend of a road. If you didn't know my road was there, you would probably miss it because of the way it kind of goes in. I think that layout I think I was in phase 2. So phase 2 plan looks a lot better, and the way they did the roads to me than they did in phase 1. Also in phase 2, they kind of seem like they put houses where you might have a 50 by 50 foot lot, a 60 foot lot, and then a 70 foot lot. So they kind of mixed them in. And then the size of the homes on the 50 foot lot are actually the smaller homes. So you really can't tell that it's a smaller lot unless you just actually go and physically look it up. Because I couldn't tell when I was just standing in front of it. And I think flexibility because of our topography and where it is, we need to kind of give that flexibility. And I like the idea, and I don't know if it's going to be very tasking, but a percentage of lots, because I don't necessarily think it's the lot size. It looks bad when you group them all together and they all look the same. Sure. And I don't know if they do that here, but I know in one location, a state we lived, when builders were in, you couldn't have the same elevation in the front of the house, so they didn't give that cookie cutter look. So I don't know if that's something, because I know with UDC, there's a lot of things that we now can't do because the state said you can't do it. They can do whatever they want. So that's just kind of where I'm thinking.
Councilmember Dolan.
So one of the things that I've heard a number of times, and it's always an ongoing discussion, is the on-street parking. And especially when we start talking about lot sizes and how much of a challenge that comes. And again, maybe as part of that discussion with the PDDs, if we're looking at allowing, a certain percentage of smaller lots as our minimum standard, and somebody wants to go over that, then, maybe we do some trade-offs. Maybe we require slightly wider streets for the larger vehicles so the fire truck can still get down there. Maybe we look at a rear entry product, or maybe we look at, the offsets where we have the garage doors set back, 35 feet, and we pull the front of the house, to 15 feet instead of the standard 25-foot monolithic face of the house. There's a number of different ways we can can address that issue, and I think that's where the PDD can become, beneficial to, again, as it was mentioned, the PDD is designed to encourage innovation, and I think we can push harder for that innovation to address some of the concerns that we have. And that, you've heard all our comments. I'm sure we've muddied the waters quite a bit for you. But I'm hoping that we can all keep an open mind as we move forward and figure out, how we can all get on the same page and rowing in the same direction. And everybody, thank you for your time and participation.
Okay. Councilman Scagliola.
If you're going to give me an open mic, I'll speak into it. First off, yeah, loved what you had to say. We should be setting the standards and not let developers set the standards for us. Secondly, yeah, let me clarify. There is a difference between density and congestion. Sometimes they go hand in hand, but with smart developments, sometimes you can avoid the congestion, even with a smaller lot. I'll give you that. Sometimes it comes down to thinking outside the box also. I'm wondering, why don't we have any really high-quality townhouses or condos on the horizon? That's one way to really increase the density without creating overdue congestion. And then finally, hey, I don't have all the answers. I know that for a fact. My wife tells me that all the time. I do have a lot of questions, though. And unfortunately, sometimes my questions come across as accusations. Not intended to be. They're really not. I usually rely on subject matter experts for before I go spouting off, and I do my absolute best not to shoot from the hip. I really appreciate the planning and zoning because you had volunteered to become those subject matter experts in our city. It's a number of hours that you dedicate to it's not even a chosen profession. It's just, I don't know, a labor of love, let's call it. But you're willing to do that. Thank you so very much for your efforts. And the planning and zoning staff, golly, I couldn't ask for any better. And I apologize if I sometimes have come across as a little bit abrupt. But you know what? If you can answer my questions, chances are I'll be your champion. That's all I ask, is for you give me an honest answer so I can make a decision. That's all I have, sir.
All right, thank you. Oh, we heard that we want to give you that flexibility also is what I picked up. And I also learned that you can't park a dually inside the garage. Thank you for that. With that, I turn it back over to Commissioner Outlaw.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, anything to add to that? No? No, sir? I'll just make one quick comment, again, from my fire marshal experience about the on-street parking. Again, part of the issue is, in my house is a good example. The garage is the minimum setback from the street, and the wife's Camaro barely fits between the garage door and the sidewalk. But when my two children were living at home, I was trying to park 5 vehicles. My wife, myself, each kid had a vehicle, and then I had a city take-home vehicle that I had to park somewhere. But with that said, one thing that staff has been very adamant about, and I don't know that we've even had a developer ask to reduce the paved width of a city street. Have you? Okay, but from the fire department perspective, the minimum residential street width, the paved width, is wide enough for you to park a pickup truck on each side and still have a roughly 12-foot lane down the middle. And I've experienced the same thing when you drive through Savannah Square on the side streets. Sometimes, somebody has to pull over because it's basically one-way traffic. But there's absolutely no issue driving a fire apparatus down the middle of that road. Chief, you haven't had any, right? See, I got you. All right. So with that said, I think we're done. If Nick, if you want to go ahead and proceed.
So if I may, and I think a couple things real quick. Just keep in mind, I believe, Commissioner Allen, when you worked for the city, it was a ladder truck, though, that you had a take-home vehicle, and that may have accounted for part of the problem. No, I'm teasing. So we've done good in an hour and 45 minutes to get on to page 3. So I will say this, maybe to get through it. I think the items that Nick sort of laid out on the front end really was a way for staff to gauge if there's a clear consensus at this point on the items. And I think staff would take the discussion on the first one, carry it forward through the next ones as well, and say they're complicated issues. It's not necessarily easy. We want to balance competing interests. And I think, so from a staff perspective, this conversation we've had for the last hour and 45 minutes is a good indication, I think, for us of what we need to do and go back through with those items. It probably allows us to revisit how we were going to approach the comp plan update and the UDC update. And so we'll very quickly skip to a couple of items just to touch on some things that we do want to do, particularly in light of this discussion, which are, there are the items that we call the problem code requirements. Hopefully they become quick victories. And so what we'd like to do is simply tell you our plan for that is to kind of click through them real quick, get out and work with P&Z, see if in fact they can be quick victories, or we may say, nope, this one's a little more complicated. Let's pause and work it into the UDC update to try to, in fairly short order, get something to council to solve these things that are problematic for us. And so I'm going to skip on here and talk about it real quick. And I'm going to kind of jump. So probably the biggest area challenge that we have that creates the most problems for commercial development has to do really with our current landscape requirements and our current tree planting requirements. One of the factors is that our ordinance it's not simple to read. And so a big problem we get into is a developer comes in with a commercial project, they've laid out some landscape requirements, and we say, that's great, but did you look at our requirements? It doesn't meet them. And at that point, it tends to become a bit of butting heads because they've already designed the thing, now we're jamming them up. And so from our perspective, we think we can make some modifications to maintain that standard and that quality, build in a bit of ease of use, and make it easier, a win-win for everybody. So for example, on some of our streets, we require a 15-foot landscape buffer out front. If you look in a whole different section of the UDC, it says a 20-foot. It doesn't really matter what it is. We could set it at 15, we could set it at 17 and a half, we could set it at 20, but we think everybody would say, just go with one standard, and it's required on all commercial, and it's easier to work through that way. Another one that we have is, well, do you have a vehicular use area near a side yard, or you just have something else? It doesn't really matter. Just tell everybody, what's my landscape buffer around the side and the back? If I'm adjacent to residential, make it 20 feet instead of 5 feet, something like that, which is pretty standard. And that's kind of what our ordinance required. So to some degree, we have these different standards that don't really help people. They complicate it, and we think we can fairly easily find some balance. We can build in some flexibility. I know Commissioner Bro really appreciates seeing trees that are going to grow 40 feet tall planted under overhead lines. Our code doesn't, it's required in the code. What we can do, a pretty quick change, if you've got overhead utilities there, you can plant ornamental trees that are going to stay 5 feet below that, and we don't have the conflicts. We can work through this, but we think we can get there at the end of the day. So what our proposal would be is to deal with some of those tree planting requirements that we have people lament going, I can't fit any more on, deal with some of the landscape and not reduce standard. The last thing we would talk about is really to come back and work on this tree mitigation requirement. And I've said this to many of you. Our ordinance works pretty well if you have a few trees on it, you don't have any trees. But if you have a heavily wooded lot, it becomes sort of punitive in terms of the tree mitigation fee. And so, for instance, the projects that we would have talked about, and we'll see how much I want to get into it, most of those folks, when people drive by, they look at it, kind of to Councilwoman Scott's comment of what I thought was there when they started, and say, these look pretty good to us. They just happen to be heavily wooded. So again, when you look at the amounts that were paid in mitigation, you know, it just seems extremely high based on the rate. And so what we think we can do is fairly easily go in and deal with the heavily wooded lots working with P&Z. And that's either capping the maximum amount you pay per acre. Once you pay a certain amount per acre, we reduce the amount you pay beyond that. So we think we can find a pretty good balance to have people still be thoughtful about trees, but for someone who's done sort of everything we would want them to do, they're not having to pay $250,000 for that. And we can work through with P&Z on some of these examples we've talked about, what seems a reasonable, when you look at the layout of, you know, for instance, the legacy at Forest Ridge down here, the retirement home, knowing what was there, knowing what they left, what seems a reasonable amount to pay, and kind of back into it that way. But I'm not hearing anybody say, yep, we think it's reasonable. Get me back to the slide on those historic projects, Nick. Thanks. Not my glasses, so I can't even see them. But that it becomes this issue of, is it really reasonable for the Schertz Emergency Clinic at 2 acres to pay $90,000 in tree mitigation? Most people would probably say that seems pretty high. It's a lot. They've kind of done everything we'd want them to do. And so we think we can make that a quick victory. So what we'd recommend is, let us go work with P&Z, see if we can do some quick victories. If they turn out to be too complicated, we'll put them aside for the EDC update. We'll bring what we can forward and make some improvements that we think benefits everybody, gives the patients, and then we'll start reworking how we're approaching the comp plan in UDC to tackle what we think is, what I'm hearing, we need to find a better balance maybe, or we need to revisit the balance. We don't want to give up on the quality. We want to look at all the tools in the toolbox to get there, to try to build in flexibility, to try to deal with some of the market realities in the housing to provide for that diversity of type, but we don't go too far. And so we would recommend we kind of, 2 hours in sort of, I think staff has what we need in our marching orders, which was really how do we approach this going forward, if everyone's comfortable with that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. James. Mr. Mayor, what I suggest at this point, rather than the back and forth again, maybe if we just I'll turn it over to you if the council members, but maybe we just, with closing remarks at this point.
Definitely. All right, let's go ahead and open the floor for discussion here. Anyone? No? No? Oh, Councilmember Dalla?
So I agree with you, Brian, on the tree mitigation, that we need to find a better way of doing that. You know, one of my little pet peeves on that is, you know, on the side of the property facing the right-of-way that we have to plant a tree every 20 feet, and it looks great when the trees are 5 feet tall and 2 inches around, and 10 years later you're driving down Schertz Parkway and you can't see the signs for the medical offices there anymore. Yeah, you know, stuff like that. You know, and you know, the mitigation fees that's a tough discussion. You know, at what point are we crossing the line between encouraging somebody to preserve and protect the trees and become just plainly punitive to make the development as expensive as possible? You know, and what's that dollar amount? And of course, that's going to different between, you know, a small business versus, you know, somebody like a huge Fortune 500 company. But again, there's some balance, and I appreciate your comments in the past, is that, yeah, if we're building some flexibility, we also have to recognize that on occasion we're going to get something that's not quite what we want. And that's just going to be part of the cost of trying to be flexible enough to give you guys the ability to work with the different developers, the different business owners that want to come in and build and develop in our city to help it work better for them, both financially and aesthetically, and to meet the quality standards that we want to expect from people that come in and build in our city. So, thank you.
Councilman Hayward.
Okay, with tree mitigation, I know that I want some flexibility, but when I want the flexibility, I don't know if it can be so flexible that you are dealing with just the developer and saying, hey, we see these trees, these are the heritage trees, you need to leave so many of those, blah, 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 and not charge so much, because now I'm trying to go back to the video that we saw. If it was just a vacant lot, he'd pay $22,000. Now that it's not a vacant lot, he's paying $300,000. So even with this new thing at $10,000 per acre, then he's paying $100,000. Is that really the right way to go for that lot? When he's leaving behind heritage oaks, he's redone everything. Is that penalizing him still because he has 10 acres of land with a lot of trees on it? And so I'm wondering, is there some flexibility that we can have with that and not penalizing them? Because typically with the tree mitigation fees, there's not a lot we can do with that money to begin with, and we got to spend it before the 10 years is up, and then it's mostly just using for planting trees in parks. So then we're looking to find out where we need trees, and we may come to a point where we may not need to plant a tree in a park, and then we're stuck with this and trying to figure out where it goes if it gets to 10 years. So I'm trying to figure out if there's some other, I like the idea that we're working on it, but if we can find some other ways to kind of trim that cost and they're not being penalized because they buy a heavily wooded lot or acreage. Thank you.
Councilmember Scott.
Yes, and I concur with Councilwoman Hayward. My comment is that there's 50 Texas cities that have tree protection ordinances. In San Antonio, they require 30% left. At MDP, it's 35% when they're doing that. This is not unreasonable. I'm just urging and I'm begging planning and zoning in good faith. Faith is a good thing if you're dealing with people of integrity, and I believe that we are. I'm not suggesting that we're not. But I do not want to make it so reasonable as to tempt developers to do what they did in Ashley Oak. Well, it's cheaper. I'll pay the fine, and I'll mow them down, and I'll make the money on the back end, because that is not cool, and I'm not cool with that. So I want to protect our trees, and I hope we're all on the same page. And to reiterate, if you're dealing with people of integrity, it is no problem. But some developers, honestly, they get dollar signs in their eyes. And you've got to just be sure to Schertz first. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Commissioner Outlaw.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commissioners, any closing thoughts? Any closing comments? Or to wrap this up?
For sharing this time with us. I think it was needed, and thank you again. It's taken a while, but I think it was I think it was beneficial.
Ken, Gordon. I also want to thank council for I knew we weren't going to do it in half an hour, but I thank you for the 2 hours we did have. I personally have a little more insight than I had before I sat down, but I think there's still going to be some give and take. We, as the Planning and Zoning Commission, will do our best. Flexibility. And the comment I wrote here was flexibility, but how much do we want to give up? And that's kind of where we're fishing right now. We've seen what we didn't like, but you liked. What we're fishing for now is what neither one of us like. Okay, so we're trying to find the other end of that perspective, and that may require again some more passing the buck to council and letting you guys make but we'll see what staff comes up. Maybe they've got some ideas to help us out here. So, Mr. Mayor, again, any of the council members have anything?
Other comments? No.
So I believe that completes all the business for the joint meeting, and therefore I will adjourn the Planning and Zoning meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner. The time is now 7:30. Our joint meeting is adjourned. We will take a 5-minute recess.
Keep on smiling too, right?
The time is now 7:40. Our regular city council meeting for April 13th, 2021 is now in session. Council, if you could please come up to the dais. Council, if you could please come up to the dais. All right, before we get started, I do have a special announcement. As a reminder, students who are participating in the Hal Baldwin Scholarship are required to sign in on the sheet located in the back. Students watching online can still receive credit by contacting Sarah Gonzalez at sgonzalez@schertz.com. Again, that email address is sgonzalez@schertz.com. We have a few proclamations I'd like to read, so I'll come down to the podium here. Okay, the first one is Mr. Robert Huntz. Is there anyone else? You join me right over here. All right. All right, this is the City of Schertz proclamation, Parental Alienation Awareness Day. Whereas the community will observe an International Parental Alienation Awareness Day on April 25th, 2021. Whereas parental alienation is a term used to describe any number of behaviors and attitudes on the part of one parent, both parents, or a third party designed to interfere, damage, destroy the relationship of a child with the other parent. It's a form of abuse that causes emotional trauma to children. Whereas alienating behaviors are frequently seen in high conflict divorces, separations, asymptomatic custody arrangements, but can occur in intact marriages. Whereas God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. Love does no harm to its neighbor. Therefore, children should be able to freely express the meaning of family. That's F-A-M-I-L-Y, for father, mother, I love you. Therefore, I, Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor of the City of Schertz, recognize and do hereby proclaim April 25th to be International Parental Alienation Awareness Day. I'd like to present this to you. Okay. And if you'd like to say a couple words.
Thank you. Yeah, so I wanted to thank the City of Schertz and the Mayor for recognizing this day, April 25th, as International Parental Alienation Awareness Day. There are approximately 25 million children that are affected by this. Thank you.
This proclamation is actually something new that with the change in times, separations and divorces have become much more common. And therefore, I encourage couples, I know they have to set their differences aside and consider the trauma they are causing to the children and not show those type of just be careful around your children. You don't want to affect them. All right, so we'll move on to the next proclamation. The City of Schertz proclamation, National Public Telecommunications Week, April 12 through April 16, 2021. Whereas emergencies can occur at any time that require police, fire, and emergency medical services. Whereas when emergencies occur, the prompt response to police officers, firefighters, and paramedics is critical to the protection of life and preservation of property. Whereas the safety of our police officers and firefighters is dependent upon the quality and accuracy of information obtained from citizens who telephone the Schertz Public Safety Communication Center. Whereas public safety telecommunicators are the first responders and the most critical contact of our citizens with emergency services. Whereas public safety telecommunicators are the single vital link for police officers, firefighters, by monitoring the activities by radio and providing them with information ensuring their safety. Whereas public safety telecommunicators of the Schertz Public Safety Communication Center have contributed greatly to the apprehension of criminals, suppression of fires, and treatment of patients. Whereas each dispatcher has exhibited compassion, understanding, professionalism during the performance of their job last year. Therefore, I, Ralph Gutierrez, Mayor of the City of Schertz, call upon the citizens of Schertz to recognize the week of April 12th through April 16th, 2021, to be the National Public Safety Telecommunications Week in Schertz in honor of the men and women whose diligence and professionalism keep our city and our citizens safe. Thank you for coming up here. I'm sorry. You'd like to say a few words? Mike's all yours.
Mayor, I'm Lieutenant Kelly Calise with the Police Department, and I have two of our dispatchers, our communication manager, Kimberly Harris, and Starla Blake is one of our communications managers, or officers, and we just like to thank Mayor and Council for this recognition for this week. We have a great team, and I'm very appreciative of everything that they do. Would you like to say something? Thank you for your support.
I just want to say that these individuals are our first responders. They are critical in the role they play in any incident that occurs in our city. Thank you so much. All right, if I could have C. Williams. Thank you for joining us. All right, this is the City of Schertz Proclamation Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in Schertz, Texas, April 2021. Whereas more than 68,461 cases of child abuse and neglect were confirmed in Texas in the year 2020. Whereas there is 1,503 confirmed victims of child abuse and neglect in Guadalupe County in 2020. Whereas communities must make every effort to promote and support programs that benefit children and their families. Whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships among different entities, including and not limited to schools, religious organizations, law enforcement agencies, child protective services, prosecution agencies, medical professionals, mental health professionals, and children's advocacy centers, and court-appointed special advocates, and other community-based nonprofit organizations. Whereas everyone in the community should become more aware, I'm sorry, I lost my place, should become more aware of children abuse prevention and consider helping parents raise their children in safe and nurturing environments, as well as supporting local professionals dedicated to meeting the needs of child abuse victims. Now, therefore, let it be resolved, in official recognition, the City of Schertz does hereby proclaim April 2021 as Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month in Schertz, Texas, and urge all citizens to work together to reduce child abuse and neglect and to be significantly improved in the response of our community when children abuse occurs in the months and the years ahead. I want to thank you. Thank you for being an advocate for child abuse. You want to say a couple words? Sure. Oh, okay.
Welcome to the Guadalupe County Children's Advocacy Center. I'd like to give you a tour of our center today for those of you who haven't been here. Our nonprofit works with children and families when there are allegations of child abuse and neglect, and we've been very fortunate to have lots of people supporting us over the years. We have a wonderful staff of professionals working with our clients every day to try to help them through what they've been through. We greet them in a child-friendly setting. We believe these kids are our heroes. They're courageous enough to come and tell their story. When they come to our center, we work with the non-offending caregivers to give them all the resources that they may need to help them along the way. We also conduct forensic interviews of children for the purpose of investigation and prosecution, and those interviews are done in a developmentally appropriate manner. We also have a space for our team to watch the interviews live and make sure that all of the questions get answered so that we can ensure that these cases will be worked as best as possible. In addition to helping whenever allegations of abuse and neglect have taken place, we also try to work with the community to educate them about child abuse and neglect and to try to prevent child abuse in the future. Our specialized therapy services are geared towards each child and their unique needs. We have play therapy services for children who are very, very young and can benefit through playing through their trauma. We also have multiple other spaces where we can work with children and families to help them through their therapeutic process. A team room, a multi-use room, and a therapy garden. These are all of the spaces we have here in our Seguin office, in addition to having other spaces at our satellite office and being able to see children at school. The Guadalupe County Children's Advocacy Center works daily with our team of law enforcement prosecutors and medical and mental health professionals to ensure the safety, justice, and healing for children and families. We're so glad you came to see our center today because the GCCAC needs your help. We're looking for champions for courageous children to make a team, join a team, to help raise money for the GCCAC to keep our mission going. Make a donation today and help spread the word. Will you be a champion for courageous children?
We are champions for courageous children. I'm a champion. We are champions for courageous children.
I'm a champion for courageous children.
I'm a champion.
I'm John Kimball, and I am a champion for courageous children.
We are champions for courageous children.
Senator Donna Campbell here, and I'm a champion for courageous children.
We are champions for courageous children. Will you be one too? So the video says a lot. My name is Christy Williams. I'm the executive director of the Guadalupe County Children's Advocacy Center. The satellite office mentioned in the video is here in Schertz. We've been in Schertz for the past 3 years. And I'm going to leave some flyers in the area outside of these doors if anyone would like to pick them up. But we are looking for your support. The kids that we work with every single day, the law enforcement that you see in this room, we're all champions for courageous children, and we're asking you to join us. So thank you so much, Mayor and Council, for recognizing Child Abuse Awareness and Prevention Month. We truly appreciate the support of the Schertz community.
Just one final note on child abuse. Child abuse prevention is a community responsibility, and finding solutions depends on everybody getting involved. So be a champion. Thank you. All right, we have one final proclamation, and that is the National Crime Victims' Rights, April 18th through April 24th, 2021. Whereas Americans are victims of more than 20 million crimes each year. These crimes also affect family members, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. Whereas crime can leave a lasting physical, emotional, and financial impact on the people of all ages and abilities, and on all economic, racial, and social backgrounds. Whereas the Crime Victims Fund today supports thousands of victims assistance programs who provide help and support to victims of violence and sex abuse, stalking victims, survivors of homicide victims, victims of drunk driving crashes, and victims of domestic, dating, and sexual violence and other crimes. Whereas by ensuring that federal offenders, criminal fines, and penalties are imposed that are deposited into the Crime Victims Fund, Congress has affirmed that those who commit crimes should be held accountable for the impact of their actions. Whereas the Crime Victims Fund provides victims assistance to more than 3.5 million crime victims annually, and also provides compensation funds to thousands of crime victims each year for reimbursements of expenses related to their victimization. Whereas victim assistance communities face new challenges to reach and service all victims, including victims of newly organized crimes. Whereas now is the time to embrace a new emphasis on learning what works in reaching undeserved victims and meeting victims' needs. Whereas advocates are joining forces with victim services providers, criminal justice agencies, and concerned citizens throughout the city of Schertz and America to raise awareness of the victims' rights and observe National Crime Victims' Rights Week. Now, therefore, let it be resolved. In official recognition, the city of Schertz hereby proclaims that the week of April 18th through the 24th, 2021, as National Crime Victims' Rights Week in Schertz, Texas, and reaffirm the city's commitment to respect and enforce victims' rights and address the victims' needs during National Crime Victims' Week and throughout the year, and express our appreciation for those victims and criminal survivors who have turned personal tragedy into a motivating force to improve the response of victims of crimes and build a more just community. Ms. Williams, thank you so much again for being an advocate. Would you like to say a few words? Okay. All right. Okay, we have a presentation. Our first presentation is regarding the newly designed Schertz.com website. Ms. Kepler?
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Linda Klepper, the Public Affairs Director, and this evening Devin Christensen is going to be going over our website redesign process. Just want to thank her and the team for all of their hard work. This was not a small undertaking, and the result is pretty amazing. So, I'll turn it over to Devin. All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. So I'm just going to go through real quick a little bit about our new website and the redesign process that we recently went through. So, the new redesigned Schertz.com, it launched this afternoon, and it'll now feature a new look and some new a new experience, kind of mostly on the homepage of the website. So in 2017 was when we first launched our website with the web host company Civic Plus, and now this will be our second site with them where we redesigned it. So this was what the old website looked like. So the redesign process, so the team that made up our redesign was Linda Klepper, myself, Madison Porras, also in Public Affairs, Natalie Schultz from the library, and Tony McFalls from IT department. So our Civic Plus contract allows us for a redesign every 3 years. So we were up for that in 2020. There was a website focus group that was conducted in 2019 to kind of get some feedback on the website that we launched in 2017 and see what we could do better to kind of get ready for this redesign process. And then in August of 2020, we started to review the content that we currently had on the page. We met with several departments to kind of help them clean up any pages, rearrange anything they wanted to, just to make sure all the content was in good shape for the redesign. And then in October of 2020 was when we started meeting with Civic Plus to go through that redesign process. Inspiration for the new design came from information that we got from the focus group, and also we looked at a lot of other municipality sites from Civic Plus to see kind of what they did and came up with our own design from that. So I will pull up the site so we can go through it a little bit. So here's what the new site looks like. It looks like it's a little bit shrunk down on this screen. But the navigation will mainly be the same, but it has a few different features just to be a little bit more interactive. And one goal that we had with the new site was to kind of make everything easily accessible, so there wasn't so much scrolling. So we jump right into our quick links here. And with these quick links, we added the alerts quick link that goes to our Civic Ready platform, so people can sign up for Civic Ready. And then we have our second layer of quick links. So these go to any external sites, so the library, economic development, YMCA, and Parks and Rec, the Civic Rec site. We have our new featured news section, so we can include highlighted information here. And then we kind of compacted our calendar and our news section, so we'll have additional news here that's not in the featured news section. And then we have our calendar tabs. So the calendars, we separated out into meetings and events to kind of capture the audiences that are looking for certain types of events and meetings. So the redesign, it kind of was just a refresh of the site, and it's kind of like putting on a new outfit for the site, so just gives it a more updated and modern look. turn it over to Natalie to go over the library website.
Hi y'all, can you hear me? Okay, I'm naturally a loud person, so I'm trying to keep it down. Okay, so yeah, this is our old website, and similar to them, I'm gonna have like the wow factor, except it looks really zoomed in on this computer, so we're gonna see. And I'm not gonna mess with the settings for the next person. Okay, it doesn't look as zoomed in for ours, but we'll go with it. So this is the Schertz Public Library website. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with all of our links and our fun programs. This is like my plug, summer readings coming up. Make sure y'all sign up for that. And like they were saying before on our old website, the picture used to take up predominantly most of the real estate, so you'd have to scroll and scroll and scroll to get to the information. We did away with that, so you can see our buttons right up top, quick links right over here, more accessible to the users. Our exciting library news and events. We're now accepting book donations at set times. You guys heard about our TMLDA award last week, so I'm not going to bore you with that. And down below, all of our fancy news, what's going on with kids and teens, the adults, and other programs we have going on at the library. So that's the library website. Refreshed, it's beautiful. We're very excited. We hope you visit it. And I promise I'd keep it quick.
All right, so going forward with this new site, so our public affairs team will continue to go through pages and kind of make sure everything got transferred over correctly, as we just did do this redesign launch today, this afternoon. So we just want to make sure, click through pages and make sure everything looks good. We also continue to conduct regular website training with staff, and as new staff come on, we will make sure they get trained if they're going to need to use the back end of the website. And then in 3 years, we do have an opportunity to do another redesign, and at that time we could migrate to another newer version of the Civic Plus platform, which could give us some more functionality there. Yeah.
All right, thank you. I love those quick links. I mean, it's much easier. It's right there. I always go into the minutes in the agenda. Thanks so much. It's great. Council, any comments? Yes, Councilmember Scott.
Yeah, boy, what a good job you did. It's nice and clean. I like the quick links, like Mayor said. I do appreciate that the calendars are live, like you can click on any date and then the event pops up. And then also, if you get lost or just everybody wants to go home sometime, you click on Schertz, you get to go home again. Fantastic job. Congratulations. Quick question. Is it automated for the events do you put them in on the front end and then it does it, or do y'all have to spend a lot of man hours updating it every week and every month?
Most of the meetings we add in once we get our master calendar for the year, and then the events we add in there as we launch different events for marketing. We add them onto the calendar at the same time.
Yeah, I saw your new parks brochures up there too. It's just, it's a really nice, clean. I'm a big fan of technology that works right, and it does. Thank you, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Good job.
Councilmember Hayward.
I just want to say good job on this, because now it's to the point where it's a lot easier. So if the elderly wanted to get on, it's easier for them and they're not getting confused and lost. And a lot of the things seem to be just one click away and they can get to where they need. So kudos on that, to making it, the refresh so that more people can use it and make it accessible.
All right, Councilmember Dalla.
Just like always, improving. Thank you, guys. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to city events and announcements. Announcements of upcoming events. Ms. Gonzalez, did I miss someone? I'm sorry. Oh.
Good evening. Just a couple of events to bring forward to you guys tonight. The first one is going to be on Saturday, April 17th. The Education Session 1 will be at Crescent Bend Nature Park at 10 a.m. It's free to attend. More information is on our newly designed website, refreshed website. And then also, as Brian likes to always mention every week, I think this will maybe be the last call for this for the Adult Kickball League. So it kicks off, no pun intended, Sunday, April 18th, and it will last through May 23rd. If you do not want to form a team, there's going to be plenty of space for spectators. So come on out to watch. And then the next regularly scheduled City Council meeting will be on Tuesday, April 27th. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gonzalez. All right, announcements and recognition by our city manager, Dr. Brown.
So, Mayor, I just have one tonight, and I think you all saw that Amazon has announced 3 new delivery stations in the area, and we were fortunate enough to be one of those new delivery stations. It'll be on Schwab Road, and so we're really excited about that. I didn't really know what a delivery station was, but my understanding is sort of the final stop. So everything comes to this delivery station, then it will be delivered out to the customers. They're saying that the sites will open later in 2021, early 2022. So we look forward to that. I just want to thank Adrian. Adrian Perez worked really hard, and his team. Also, our development team, our engineering team also helped get this project underway. So kudos to all of them.
Yes, thank you. Yes, kudos to the team. Appreciate it. We're moving. Schertz is growing in different ways. Thank you so much. All right, I don't have any further announcements, so we'll move on to the hearing the residents. This time is set aside for any person who wishes to address the City Council. Each person is limited to 3 minutes, and we ask before addressing the Council, for the record, please state your name and address. Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker, please call our first speaker.
First is Maggie Titterington.
Good evening again, Council. Just a quick reminder, our chamber luncheon is next Tuesday. It is at EVO, not at Santikos, so make sure you go to EVO. Today was the last day to RSVP. I think we might be at capacity. They're keeping us at 50%, so you could probably slide in and RSVP last minute tonight, midnight. I'll slide you in. And also the next day, the next day, the 21st, April 21st, we're doing our digital marketing trends for 2021. So if you are lost on social media or how to promote your business and don't know the first steps and don't know what the top 2 trends, there's 2 out of the 10 that are really hot right now, got to come, register online through the chamber. And I would like to read this letter that was sent to me. This is regarding the vaccination clinics. This is by one of the nurses who has been assisting, I guess every time you do it, but she sent this to me, asked me to read it. Good evening. I feel I would be remiss not to congratulate Mayor Gutierrez and the Schertz EMS and Fire Department, especially Chief Cade Long and Summer Hall, for the foresight of making Guadalupe County a center to distribute these life-saving COVID vaccines. Schertz residents should be proud of these wonderful folks. It has been a joint effort with Cibolo and Selma Police, EMS, and fire departments. Some of these hardworking folks are coming in on their day off. I have seen Mayor Gutierrez and his wife Raquel and Councilmember Allison Hayward take time to greet and meet people to make sure this process is working. They are making a huge difference in so many lives. As a volunteer, I have received nothing but high praises from the recipients of these vaccines. Also, as I am a registered nurse who is administering these vaccines, the volunteers that are there are also taking care of us, asking if we need water or something for our comfort. I have enjoyed my interactions with the area residents, and they have shared their stories. Some have had experienced long wait times and confusion with other family members in other centers, but have shared how well done the City of Schertz is handling theirs. Please share my gratitude with these wonderful people. I thank you for your time. Respectfully, Susan K. Cardenas, RN. So she's just really overwhelmed. And actually, too, I've had the honor and privilege of volunteering at the vaccination clinics these past few months, and I cannot strongly encourage enough, if residents within the hearing of my voice, they need volunteers. This week, I believe, Mayor, if that's correct, because I know somebody came and approached me. So please, and I may be giving the wrong number, I'm just going to direct them to Summer Hall. I know Raquel is orchestrating this, but if you all call 210-619-1314, Summer will get you all hooked up if you can volunteer, but they so desperately need help this week. Volunteering is such a blessing. It has blessed me to talk to the residents, to see the residents. It is the fastest 3 or 4 hour shift you're ever going to do, morning or afternoon. But please, if you all can, help out. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker, please call the next speaker.
Yes, next we have Emilio Silvas.
My name is Emilio Silvas, and I reside at 9939 Meadowlark in Converse, Texas. Good evening, honorable members of the City Council. Thank you for this opportunity to speak with you tonight. As I mentioned, my name is Emilio Silvas, and I am running for Place 7 on the Judson ISD Board of Trustees. I'm here tonight to introduce myself to you and to your constituents. Your community is represented in part in the Judson ISD. And it will be my honor to represent you and your constituents on the Board of Trustees. My campaign is focused on providing quality education to our students, valuing and retaining our quality staff, providing equal representation of all communities, and enhancing transparency of financial decision-making. After May 1st, I would be honored to work with you on common interests to benefit our students in the district. Thank you again for your time and consideration this evening.
Thank you, sir. All right, we'll move on to consent agenda items. Consent agenda items are considered self-explanatory, and information packets are provided to council and available for public viewing. These items require no separate discussion unless requested by council. Item number 1, minutes. Consideration or action regarding the approval of the minutes of our special workshop meeting on April 2nd, 2021, and the minutes of our regular meeting on April 6th, 2021. Item number 2, resolution number 21R29, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing the city manager to sign a letter of intent with Sterling McCall Ford for the purchase of 1 new ambulance for the fiscal year 2021-2022 and other matters in connection therewith. Item number 3, ordinance number 21S 12, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, to approve a specific use permit to allow for mini warehouse and public storage on approximately 25 acres of land located northeast of the intersection of 3009 and FM 78, also known as 200 FM 3009, also known as Guadalupe County property identification numbers 153960, 164035, 67453, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. Item number 4, ordinance number 21S11, an ordinance by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, amending the official zoning map by rezoning approximately 25 acres of land to General Business District GB2, located northeast of the intersection of FM 3009 and FM 78, also known as 200 FM 3009, also known as Guadalupe County property identification numbers 153960, 164035, 67453, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. And finally, item number 5, resolution number 21R32, a resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, approving and authorizing a service agreement with Seco Electric for on-call traffic light repairs, maintenance, and other matters in connection therewith. Council, do any of these items need to be removed for separate consideration? None? Okay, do I have a motion to approve consent agenda items 1 through 5?
So moved.
Okay, you caught me by surprise. So who said what? Okay. Do I have a second? Davis. Okay. We have a motion to approve consent agenda items. Motion made by Councilmember Hayward and second by Councilmember Davis. Council, any other comments? If not, let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. We have 7 ayes, no objection. Motion passes. All right, we'll move on to discussion items. Resolution number 21R33. A resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing an amendment to the professional service agreement with Horn Associates Incorporated, totaling no more than $510,000 for professional engineering related services on the 2020 span resurfacing project and other matters in connection therewith. Ms. Woodley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Kathy Woodley, City Engineer. A lot of times we have these sorts of contract amendments on the consent agenda. We thought with this one, it's a large change percentage-wise of the original contract amount, and there are a lot of moving parts to this, so I just want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to ask questions. I'm just going to go through it and sort of simplify what's going on. So the original project with Kimley Horn, their professional services, it was prepared and authorized in March 2020. Remember March 2020? That was kind of a crazy time, right? So a lot has happened since then. At that time, most of the streets on the 2020 SPAM list were proposed to be resurfaced. At the time, we planned to chip seal them. We hadn't yet done the chip seal projects of the 2018 list, so that was the first scope, and I'm using an old map here to get the most bang for our buck, but the areas in blue were proposed to be resurfaced. So what's changed since then, and why are we coming back and needing to expand this contract? The biggest thing really is that field work that was associated with that original list, they went out there and looked at the areas with a fine-tooth comb and determined that on many streets, I think there are 10 different street segments, we're looking at a different remediation, a different preservation technique other than just doing some base repairs and resurfacing the street with a slurry seal or a chip seal, whatever kind of resurfacing. What they found was that there are more areas that need base repair, so it sort of kicks it into that category where if you're going to be doing all these small sections of base repair, you should just rehabilitate the whole street. So in order to do that, more engineering services are needed. We're also adding into their contract, including the remedial efforts for that 2018 SPAM list, the slurry seal, the fog seal, so that we can put the different treatments together and get a better unit price and just take care of all of it at once. We're also moving along to design for the reconstruction of Lindbergh and some drainage to go along with that. So we're adding that into this contract to continue working with the same consultant, get as much done as possible. Also, originally, everything was resurfacing, everything was chip seal or slurry seal. It would be one construction contract. Now, we're looking at 4 separate contracts for construction. There's the resurfacing of the new 2020 streets that will be slurry sealed, and that'll also include the slurry seal in the estates at Wilson's Preserve. Then there's fog seal. Generally, you don't have a contractor who does both of those treatments, so that'll be a separate contract broken out, and that fog seal is the rest of the remediation over the chip seal areas in neighborhoods that was done with the 2018 projects. Then we'll have the rehabilitation work, which previously we anticipated it all to be resurfacing. Now we've got some areas that need to be rehabilitated. That does include some geotech borings. We're hopeful that those borings will indicate that that's an appropriate technology. If we find out there's less base there and we do need to go in with yet another technique, we'll come back at that point. But we're hopeful that won't be the case. And then there'll be the reconstruction contract at Lindbergh. That one will include some additional professional services like geotechnical borings, topographic survey, and some subsurface utility engineering. And then you'll find this, I think, on the last page of the contract included with the resolution. The limits of this project, we do say Lindbergh, but it does include picking up some drainage and putting it in curb inlets and some subsurface drainage on Exchange and sort of the extreme limits of the intersections with Curtis and Main Street. So any additional questions?
All right. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker?
So this is, so the resolution is for the agreement with Kimley Horn Associates, Inc., whatever. Correct. Can you clarify as far as what their scope in this is? And the reason I'm asking is because obviously we're redoing a lot of things that were, done initially last year, and after figuring out it didn't really work the way we'd wanted it to, we have to do them again. So obviously it's costing a little bit more money. I just want to clarify. I don't want to point blame. I just want to make sure that this organization wasn't the one that came to you and said, you should do the chip seal. Is that part of their role there? And did we go ahead?
To a certain extent, that's part of their role. It was a different consulting firm that did put together the design that we did the 2018 work off of. But it's not necessarily that firm made the wrong choice in saying you should do chip seal. The chip seal is a technique that can be used in certain areas, in certain communities. There is a different level of tolerance for things that our residents came back and we heard loud and clear they don't have a tolerance for that. There were economic considerations. I think that was one of the primary points that led to us choosing the chip seal versus a slurry seal, slurry seal being fairly significantly more expensive. And so at this point, we've, counseled together with staff and with some support from our consulting firms, have made the decision to go in the direction of not doing chip seal projects. Not necessarily that the project that was done was a failure from a technical perspective. It was just something that, after the fact, I think everyone recognized this community and these residential neighborhoods are not in support of that type of a surface. And you all made the decision that we are willing to spend a little bit more because that's what we're hearing from the community.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't, that they were saying this is what you needed. One of the things that I was remembering is that, with the tight turns and things like that, it wasn't the right layout for that type of product. And to me, that should have been a technical, like if they're the experts, I don't know if they brought that up. And, that's all in the past, and we've got a plan moving forward, but I'm just like, before we add more money to that, to the people giving us advice, making sure that it's not bad advice that we're continuing to follow. But I hear what you're saying. It sounds like it was, cost-benefit analysis, and there was a group of people involved, and, we're going to claim responsibility for saying, maybe we tried to save some money, and it didn't turn out the way we wanted. So as long as it's not that particular firm's, the weight's on them, then I feel comfortable with it. That's fine.
So that's correct. I also want to add one more thing. We have had a number of lessons learned with this, and I think even the consultant that did that design and this consultant will take what we've observed and put that to their body of knowledge for the future and say, here are some other problems that we've encountered with using this particular treatment in these particular areas. And one thing is that a part of the problem is that the contractor that actually did the work in some cases missed, they need to come back and do some remediation. That's part of the warranty of the work that they did.
Okay.
So some of that was done in the cul-de-sacs, it's more forgiving if you use a different treatment. The treatment that was used would maybe work, but because we know that it's not very forgiving, we maybe want to shy away from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilmember Scott?
Yes, so I had a couple questions. I'd like to see, and if it's on here and I missed it, forgive me, but the cost for the per project and then what still needs to be done and the cost it's going to, how much it's going to be now. Like, what's the difference? To see it all in one place, because it's kind of piecemeally to me, and I'm having to kind of go through and do it up here instead of just seeing it on a spreadsheet. Do you have it on a dime, or I'm sorry?
So I don't. So are you talking about the amount of the original professional services contract?
Yeah.
And then
shortfalls and what needs to be done now and the cost.
Okay, so I only have pieces of that.
Right.
And I think that it is in the memo with the resolution.
Yeah.
It does indicate, I believe,
I didn't see it all in one place, and I might have missed it. It's a lot of, I'm sorry on the record.
I apologize. I don't know that I have the correct, maybe I do. I do have it. The breakdown. Got it right here. Sorry.
Fantastic.
I didn't know I had it printed out. Okay, so the original, if you look on your memo under the breakdown of the services,
yeah,
engineering and design service, the original authorized amount was $122,875, and the additional amount, once we added the rehabilitation to go along, instead of just surface treatments, added the remedial efforts over the 2018 project, and added the reconstruction of Lindbergh to those design services, the proposed additional service is $344,970.
Wow, so it originally was $122,000, but the remedial is an additional $344,000?
Those are the additional services needed to complete their design and bid package and their construction phase services for the entirety of the rest of the 2020 projects and the remediation of the 2018 work.
Okay, so what are we doing to inspect them, for lack of a better word, like inspect what you expect, so after the work is done to make sure? Like, we've had problems in the past, like the animal control thing, the animal building that had all these problems with air conditioner. That was before anybody was here, but obviously if we did due diligence before signing off on it, or I don't know, I'm just kind of concerned, because is this just standard, like you always have to go do remedial, are we getting subpar work, or I understand about the seal, the slurry, all that, we've been through that, but I'm just trying to get more information, I guess.
So this is another reason why I'm saying this one has got a lot of moving parts.
Right.
So the remedial work that's being done is, we're calling it remedial. It's to fix a construction shortfall or situation that occurred after construction of a project. And City of Schertz decided we're going to go back and we're going to fix those issues and apply another beneficial surface to increase the standard of what was done. Okay.
Yeah.
So what Kimley Horn is being authorized to do is put together a set of plans to give that we'll use to get a contractor to bid on to do that remedial work. Okay. So Kimley Horn isn't remediating any of the work.
Oh, I understand, and
okay. I guess I'm missing your.
No. I was just trying to get, like, how much did it cost us, and how much will it cost us to fix it, and will it all be fixed this time? And then my second question, and I realized I did not let you answer that.
Well, I think maybe I misunderstood and thought, because you're actually wanting to know the cost of the construction of the work.
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
okay.
because it cost us, when people make mistakes, it seems like it's costing us, the city. Because if they did it right the first time, you don't have to go back. And then these test holes, and then the backfill, and all of that. But instead, we're just going to resurface the whole thing, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, and maybe the problem is I'm not a mechanical engineer.
I think we're just using different terms.
Okay.
So there's the remediation that'll be done that's...
Can y'all break it down? It looks like you got it going on.
My thought on this was we gave them a budget to do the road and we agreed to chip seal, so it wasn't something that the contractor did. We thought it would work and it didn't work. And so because it didn't work, we're having to pay for it because we were trying to go within a budget. It had nothing to do with the company in and except their work themselves. It was what council voted for as a budget and the way we wanted the roads to go.
Okay, thank you, Allison.
May I interject too? And it turns out that the chip seal did work very well in a couple of other areas. It just didn't work because of the cul-de-sacs and things. So there's no blame involved. It's just, hey, we gave it the best shot based on the information we had. It just didn't happen to work out optimally.
We learned lessons learned. And then one more thing before I get off was the chip seal used in Crescent Bend, because that's a fantastic road. It works good. Do you not? That was there, right? Chip seal in Crescent Bend when y'all resurfaced it a couple years ago. It's a good road. It's very good. Thank you.
We weren't.
I'm done here. Thank you, Councilwoman. It's been a long day.
Understood, and thank you for
both council members
for translating that. Because I think you got to the heart of it. We're calling it remedial, but it's not so much because it wasn't done properly. Some of it wasn't done properly, but they'll do that on their own dime. Those fixes will be done. Okay. Yeah.
That's quite all right. All right, council, any other comment? Yes, Councilmember Scagliola.
Okay, and this is about increasing the scope of their work also. So
yes,
they're not going back just to reinvent what they were doing at 122,000. They're actually covering all of the 2018 projects. So that's in 2020. So that's what the increase is about. Hey, I don't like how much engineers charge, but on the other hand, you'd better have a good engineering firm to handle these things. That's all I have, sir.
All right. No other comments? Council, is there a motion to approve resolution number 21, R33? Motion's made by Councilmember Scagliola, second by Councilmember Hayward. Council, any other comments? If none, let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 We have 7 ayes, no objection, motion passes. All right, we'll move on to item number 7, resolution number 21R34. A resolution by the City Council of the City of Schertz, Texas, authorizing a submission to the office of Congressman Vicente Gonzalez to seek funding under the fiscal year 2022 community project funding for the Corbett ground storage tank. Mr. Kelm, Ms. Williams, you have the floor, sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Scott McClellan, the Assistant Director of Public Works. So tonight, we're here to bring a resolution to seek your approval and support for submitting for community project funding. And so a little bit about this, and there was more in the packet about it. So in early March, the House Committee on Appropriations announced a new project or new process for how they're going to distribute these community project funds. That hasn't been done this way in a few years. And so what the process is that each member of Congress has the opportunity to submit up to 10 projects within their district for these community project funding. And so there's a whole lot of documentation about what projects are eligible. Each project has to be submitted under one of 10 subcommittees, which is basically breaking up the whole federal government into these 10 subcategories. So you have, defense, homeland security, interior subcommittee. There's transportation and HUD. So you have to take your project and fit it into one of those. And so that's something that we've been working with Councilman Gonzalez's staff over the last week, trying to figure out what exactly the best fit is for which subcommittee. But it has to be submitted to the right one that has the most success of happening. And so one of the big criteria that they've stressed to us is getting community support. for the project. That's a big thing in community project funding being awarded. And so that's part of why we're here tonight, is to get a resolution approved saying that City Council backs this submission to Congressman Gonzalez's office. So the funding is competitive. Obviously, the members of Congress can submit up to 10 projects. So there's a lot of projects that are going to be submitted, both just in Congressman Gonzalez's district. So we're competing locally, but then also obviously at a national level in that House committee under each subcommittee. So it's no guarantee, just like any funding opportunity, but it's one that we think we have a good chance of getting because of the project that we're planning to submit. So just quick recap on what project we're planning to submit. So we've got the Corbett ground storage tank. So as all of you are aware, we've got our new Corbett elevated storage tank down in southern Schertz. So the master plan for that site is to add a 3 million gallon ground storage tank as well, and add a permanent pump station out there. The one out there right now is just temporary to serve the elevated tank. And so got a picture here, maybe a little hard to see, but up here, location map, we're off of Ray Corbett Drive in 1518, kind of behind Ray Corbett Junior High. And so this location is also another thing we're excited about that's going on the water system side, is that we're getting the secondary feed from SSLGC. Currently is under construction and almost complete, and that's coming to this site. And so this ground storage tank is kind of the missing piece in that. The ultimate plan would be that SSLGC water goes into this 3 million gallon ground storage tank and is then pumped up to the elevated tank and serves southern Schertz water on a daily basis. But the pump station will be sized in such a way that it can actually pump up back all the way up to the Live Oak tank site up here, which is our main take point for SSLGC. And from Live Oak, once we get water there, then it can be distributed to the rest of the city. And so it's a project that adds some redundancy and resiliency into our water system. So it's an important project, and those are reasons why we think it'd be a great fit in this community project funding, and also the things being ready to go. We're getting design started now on the project, so we're hoping that it'll be shovel ready later this year around October. So those are kind of some of the high points. Like I said, this is just gaining approval, and so that we can submit to show that our city council is fully in favor of what we're doing and submitting. And we'll certainly keep you up to date on what's going on and how things work out for us. But hopefully it'll go well. So, anybody have any questions?
All right. Before I open it up to council, you mentioned community support. I know we're going to have council support because we're saving money here. How can the community be involved to notify our congressmen or those individuals that will be in charge of selection so that we can get 43,000 residents really pounding those emails or calls or whatever needs to be done? Can that be made available?
Yeah. I mean, that's a good idea. We can try to work up something with public affairs and try to see if we can get some sort of way to capture that feedback, make sure that we're voicing to the congressman just how big of an impact. And that's something in the project abstract that we included. That's we showed this is actually an impact to all 43,000 residents, because in the instance that our tank site at Live Oak goes down, or that feed from SSLGC goes down, we can actually serve water. And so that's coming out of what we saw some in February. It's a big deal to keep water flowing. So.
All right.
Short answer to your question, Mayor, is contact Congressman Gonzalez's office. He's been a huge supporter. Chandler Smith is his legislative director, so she's been helping us through this process. But District 15, folks, they can contact his office. That's where the advocacy comes from.
All right. Thank you.
Along with any letters that y'all would like to submit on your behalf.
Okay, I'll have that number ready for the consent agenda item. Okay, Council. Yes, Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, it's it's wonderful that I think it's part of how you operate, that your preparation that goes in, that's involved in a lot of these projects, that you're able to capitalize on opportunities like this when they come along. So, short and simple. Thank you. That's all I have, sir.
Right. Councilmember Dalla?
Just real quick, 2 questions. What's the dollar amount that you're requesting, and do you have an idea what the timeline is on the awards?
So $5 million is what we're anticipating the project to be. As far as the timeline, so we have to submit later this week to the Congressman's office, and from what I understand, talking from them, they have to finalize their 10 recommended projects by the end of the month. And then from there, I think they're looking at sometime in the summer when they're going to start considering projects. So, that's why we're pretty comfortable with us saying that we'll be ready to go in October. That it'll kind of line up with some of the deadlines. We don't think that'll be a hindrance to the project because just the process that it has to go through and evaluating so many projects. So, but as far as I know, they haven't published like a hard date of this is when they'll have decided funding.
Yeah, I mean, this is a brand new program, never been done before, so
yeah,
there's a lot of questions from the congressman's staff on how they were going to handle it. So I think they're still developing their process.
Right. Well, thank you, and again, great job on just being ready to take advantage of an opportunity that comes like that. It's awesome.
All right, definitely. Council, is there a motion to approve resolution number 21R34?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion made by Councilmember Whitaker, second by Councilmember Brown. Was that correct? Yes. Okay. Council, any other comments? Let's go ahead and call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. We have 7 ayes, no objection. Motion passes. All right, we'll proceed with our roll call confirmation. Our city secretary, Brenda Dennis, will provide us roll call confirmation on the consent agenda items 1 through 5 and discussion items 6 and 7. Ms. Dennis?
Yes, sir. On consent agenda, my motion was made by Councilmember Hayward, seconded by Councilmember Davis. Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker, Councilmembers Davis, Scott, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 6, resolution number 21R33. A motion was made by Councilmember Scagliola, seconded by Councilmember Hayward. Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker, Councilmembers Davis, Scott, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed. Item number 7, resolution number 21R34. A motion was made by Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker, seconded by Councilmember Brown. Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker, Councilmembers Davis, Scott, Dalla, Scagliola, Hayward, Brown voted yes. No one voted no. Motion passed.
Thank you, Ms. Dennis. All right, we'll move on to agenda item number 8. That's a monthly update on our major projects in progress, our capital improvement projects. Item number 9 is the COVID-19 update. And this information packages were provided to council and available for public viewing on Schertz.com. So we'll continue with requests and announcements. Requests and announcements by our city manager, Dr. Brown.
I got 2 emails from CPS just tonight, and it's our friends from ERCOT are requesting conservation across the state. And they call it a first-level energy alert, which I don't know really what that means, but they're just asking for conservation. There have been various factors in the weather today: higher than forecasted temperatures, lower plant capacity due to maintenance, overcast skies impacting solar output, and wind power was lower than expected. So they're not expecting rolling outages, so we got that going for us. Just thought I'd pass that on. I don't think there's much else we can do about it.
Yeah, Council, is there any updates or information that you're requesting from staff? Okay, Council, is there any items you'd like to place on a future agenda item? All right, we'll continue then. Announcements by our council members. Mayor Pro Tem Whitaker.
As far as this past week, just kind of a repetitive Citizens Police Academy. We've got a few weeks left on that. One visit to the COVID clinic, and then attended Moving on Main on Sunday. It was a lovely day. Brought the family out and the dog, and it was a great job. I was really surprised to see so many people actually exercising in the sun, but good for them. I just watched them while I sweated on the side.
Councilmember Davis. Councilmember Scott.
Just to reiterate, moving on to Maine, it was so charming. It reminded me of when we first moved to Schertz. It reminded me of why we moved to Schertz, and I loved it. And I got to see Mayor Ralph on his little scooter. It was so cute. It was fun. Thank y'all. Y'all, staff, y'all did a great job. Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Dalla.
Just the same thing. I attended Moving on Main last Sunday, and it was a good event. It was nice to see people getting outside and start doing things again. So thank you to the staff for putting it on.
Councilmember Scagliola.
Yeah, ditto on Moving on Main. I also spent a few hours today volunteering over at the Shot Clinic. Such an impressive operation over there. Lot of credit goes to our first responders and all the other volunteers. That's all I have.
Councilmember Hayward.
Yes, excuse me. I did the virtual TML legislative update, and there's just some bills that's going through or that might go through that could be a little bit weird for the city. I attended the Moving on Main Street. It was a really good event. Got to volunteer and do some things and then actually have some fun. And the one meeting I did today was the Guadalupe County Community Coalition, and one thing that I found out that I guess when you don't have kids anymore, little ones, you don't realize the things that are going on, and that apparently now with e-cigarettes, they're actually really targeting young people. And I found out that they make them look like highlighters, lipstick, but highlighters and asthma medication, and they try to make them have fruity flavors, like Cinnamon Toast Crunch, and they actually kind of market them looking like the food product. And so the FDA has sent a warning to those companies to let them know to not do that, but nothing stern has happened. So just be mindful that kids could be doing it, and apparently they tend to do them at school because they find a way to do them because they don't look like e-cigarettes. And then there is I think it's called Say What. I'll have to verify that, but there is a organization where young kids can join, and it's to help get the word out about e-cigarettes and how it could possibly affect them, and it affects their frontal lobe and their development if they start early. So just something to look out for as parents.
All right, Councilmember Brown.
Ditto on the Moving on Main. Great job for everybody. It was a good time out there, and just good to be outside again, and thanks for tonight as well.
All right. The time is now 8:54. We stand adjourned.